Secretary Redu, will you call the roll?
Regent Bartel. Here. Regent Bailey.
Here.
Regent Bradley.
Yes.
Regent Drew.
Here.
Regent Evers.
Here.
Regent Falvo.
Here.
Regent Higgins.
Here.
Regent Rybar.
Here.
Regent Menedy.
Here.
Regent Milner.
Here.
Regent Pointer.
Here.
Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Roberts. Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Tyler.
Here.
Regent Vasquez.
Here.
Regent Walsh.
Here.
Regent Whitburn.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. The minutes of our March meeting have been distributed. May I have a motion to approve the minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The reports for the Educational Communications Board, Hospital Authority Board, and Wisconsin Technical College System have been provided. Any questions or comments on any of those? All right. A few brief comments to start out. This has been, and I appreciate all of your patience yesterday, and I know we'll have a long meeting today. It's been a busy meeting and a busy year. Been a lot of things to keep track of and get up to speed on. As we look to what we're going to do over the next biennium, we might also look back a little bit to where we've been, and especially for the benefit of some of our new board members, I thought we'd offer a brief recap now, and I do mean brief, as to what some of the things we've been involved in the past year. A number of regions participated in the President's Advisory Committee on the roles of the UW system, which was convened by President Riley and chaired by Regent Pruitt. Other members of that committee were Regent Bartel, Regent Crane, and Regent Emeritus Jay Smith. I was also a member of that. One of the many recommendations by that committee was to devolve flexibilities and responsibilities from the state to the UW system and to the UW institutions. President Riley accepted that committee's recommendations and presented an implementation plan to the Regents last September. The Regents endorsed that plan, and all three of our committees have seen evidence this year of the changes that are taking place. Some of those include the new block grant funding incorporated into the 2011-13 budget allocations by the Office of Budget and Planning, new personnel systems that are currently being developed, one for UW-Madison and another for the remaining UW institutions. The process of academic program planning and review is being revamped to make it more efficient. And UW capital projects costing less than $500,000 and funded entirely from gifts and grants are now exempt from the Building Commission approval and Division of State Facilities management. As a board, we also looked as to how we could operate better. As was mentioned yesterday during our farewell to President Spector, two ad hoc committees, working groups were formed. One to review the UW System Board of Regents' roles and responsibilities, and the other to review UW System governance and structure. The first was chaired by Regent Bradley and included Regent Menedy and Regent Walsh among other members. The committee provided an overview of Regents' responsibilities and stressed the importance of maintaining a strategic focus at our meetings. The READY committee, which will convene here shortly, is a product of that group's work. The second committee, which I chaired, and also included Regents Crane and Pruitt, as well as several chancellors and other system colleagues. Our group examined various possibilities for university system structure. We recommended the creation of advisory councils, which some chancellors already have and which could be supplemented with one or two regent members. I understand that the new regents have been provided with copies of both of those committees' reports, and I'm sure I speak for Regent Bradley when I say that we'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have about the work of those two groups. As a board, we also evolved and changed. With terms expiring and new appointments being made, 8 new faces have joined us around this table since the last year at this time. Looking at recent events and issues elsewhere, I know that many UW students have been following the debate in Washington about student loan rates. The Senate recently voted to reject competing plans to postpone the scheduled doubling of the 3.4% interest rate on subsidized federal student loans. While both sides, Democrats and Republicans, agree that the interest rate should be frozen, They disagree on how to cover the $6 billion cost of the one-year extension. Even so, the expectation is that a deal can be worked out by the July 1st deadline. Just to give you an idea, in 2010-2011, 82,000 University of Wisconsin system students, including 69,000 resident undergraduates, took advantage of this program, borrowing over $370 million in subsidized federal loans. At this time, when there's certainly a growing loan debt for student borrowers and economic hardship for parents and students, we hope Congress will maintain the current student rates for our undergraduates. Turning to our state capitol, the Governor's Council on College and Workforce Readiness held its second meeting last week. Council members were provided an overview of academic and career planning efforts taking place in other states, as well as a presentation by the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development outlining Wisconsin's job needs. The task force of the council is to recommend policies and programs to improve students' college and career readiness. President Riley, DPI Superintendent Evers, WTCS President Clancy, and WAICU President Waganke serve as members of the council, and it next meets on June 19th. Finally, I know Kevin always likes to share news from around the system, but I have something to start things off, and because it happened in lacrosse, I maybe have a little more knowledge of it. In late April, the UW-Lacrosse Student Association honored President Riley with the Higher Education Advocate of the Year Award. Kevin was chosen to receive the award for his leadership of the UW system during what the student leaders called rigorous times. In making the presentation, Student Association President Madison Hines put it this way: we are honoring President Riley not only because he has been a strong proponent of the UW system in a tumultuous political and financial time in our state's history, but his leadership, guidance, and voice have provided an effective model of professional advocacy to our student body and our institution. A well-deserved honor, Kevin. Congratulations. And I'll now turn it over to you.
Thank you. Well, in exchange for mentioning that award, I'm going to greatly shorten my report this morning. You'll be happy to know, because we do want to save adequate time for discussion of the 2013-15 budget update. So I just have a few things I want to say, and then we'll move right along. And I'll send you in an email the rest of the report that I was going to deliver this morning. We just got through the commencement season, the close of the school year, and for many that marks the beginning of a new adventure. And I know that several of you spoke at commencement events, and we thank you for doing that. They're always great events to be part of. Let me touch on three very recent examples of ways we're trying to help to get more students to be able to cross that stage with their parents and families and siblings applauding. And by the way, that's one of the great things about this season is parents and families and siblings do get to come to campus and watch their progeny walk toward that important piece of paper and think, boy, I never thought this kid was going to make it, or boy, am I glad I don't have to pay tuition next year, or boy, I'm really proud of this kid. And that's a nice time for parents, and we help to provide that. Three examples of the ways we're taking steps to have more students get there, I'll mention. First, last month, working with UW Help, which is an acronym, HELP, stands for Higher Education Location Program, working with the staff in that program at UW Extension, I sent out a letter to about 8,000 Wisconsin people who previously attended UW institution. These are people whose college experiences were interrupted and never quite finished. In that letter, I invited them to come back and complete their associate or baccalaureate degree. And I'm pleased to report that since we started reaching out in this way back in 2007, these efforts have resulted in 7,540 applications to UW system campuses from students who otherwise might not have returned to pursue a degree. Second, there's Project Win-Win. UW Green Bay, UW Platteville, UW Stevens Point, and UW colleges were among 64 institutions in 9 states that participated in the Project Win-Win study to identify former students who withdrew from college for varying reasons, but whose academic record already qualifies them for an associate degree. So they're people who dropped out somewhere along the way, but the credits that they had earned and the way they could apply those credits might qualify them for an associate degree. So at Stevens Point, for example, after reviewing several hundred degree audits over a 10-year period, it was confirmed that more than 140 students were eligible to receive their associate degrees retroactively. Those degrees were presented at last month's commencement ceremony at UW-Stevens Point. And we know, among other things, that people who have an associate degree versus people who simply have a high school diploma have a lot better chance of getting jobs, keeping jobs, and earning a higher salary. Third, we've made a key enhancement to the Veterans Educational Portal, adding a mobile version of the website so that veterans have better access to higher education resources through their smartphones or other mobile devices. The portal was first launched in November 2010 to help veterans make the transition from military service to college life. The site guides Wisconsin veterans toward the right fit among Wisconsin's public colleges and universities. Our goal is to make higher education as veteran-friendly as possible. Now veterans can explore higher education opportunities from wherever they are, even on their smartphones, and we certainly urge and more of them to do that in the state that has the most generous higher education aid program for veterans in the country. So, as I said, I'm going to skip the rest of my remarks. I did want to end them with a little poem, however, because I mentioned the connection to parents that always comes with commencement. We're in the middle of this meeting. It occurred to me between Mother's Day and Father's Day. So I wanted to read a poem called Parents by William Meredith, who's a 20th century American poet. What it must be like to be an angel or a squirrel, we can imagine sooner. The last time we go to bed good, they are there, lying about darkness. They dandle us once too often, these friends who become our enemies. Suddenly one day, their juniors are as old as we yearn to be. They get wrinkles where it is better smooth, odd coughs and smells. It is grotesque how they go on loving us. We go on loving them. The effrontery barely imaginable of having caused us, and of how. Their lives, surely we can do better than that. This goes on for a long time. Everything they do is wrong, and the worst thing, they all do it, is to die, taking with them the last explanation, how we came out of the wet sea or wherever they got us from, taking the last link of that chain with them. Father, mother, we cry, wrinkling, to our uncomprehending children and grandchildren. Now, some people may think that's a sad poem, but I think it's actually a very happy poem about the fraught and loving relationships with parents and how they change as we all age. So, happy Mother's Day and Father's Day to all. Back to you, President.
For the new Regents, you can see from yesterday's meeting and today's that poetry is often a part of our meeting. So, the next item on our agenda, carried over from yesterday, is an information-only presentation about the next biennial budget and how we might begin to develop our request for UW funding that goes to the DOA in September. A reminder, we'll vote on the complete package in August. For now, Michael Morgan will lay out some of the bigger issues we must consider as we develop that request. Michael.
Thank you, Regent Vice President Smith, for the introduction. Good morning. We're going to talk a little bit this morning about the 2013 biennial budget. You'll recall that at the April meeting up at UW Superior, we reviewed our strategic framework for the last several years, which is the growth agenda for Wisconsin, and we asked some very fundamental questions like why it remains relevant and vital to the state, and why state resources provided to UW institutions work is a sound investment. Today we're going to continue that discussion. Hopefully what we'll have here this morning is me leading a discussion with you all, and you will provide some input on some of the things we'll talk about in terms of how we might want to approach the 13-15 biennial budget. After I'm done, David Miller will talk a little bit about the 13-15 biennial budget in the capital budget. For those of you who For those of you who follow state biennial budgets closely, and I assume all of you either have, and those who are new on the board will, the board's action on a budget request this year is going to be a little bit different from previous years. And what I want to do is to focus much of today's discussion on those changes. That way, when we get together in August for action on the biennial budget request, we'll all have a better understanding of the process and can then focus more intensely on the substance of our request. One new feature of the budget request this year will be linking our proposed plans to our performance measures that came out of the last budget, the budget period that we're in right now, Act 32. Those performance measures are new. However, having performance measures is not new to UW system. We have, for over the last couple of decades, reported back to the Board of Regents on system performance in a variety of areas, and we'll continue to do that. But this year, we'll have to talk about how we match up what it is that we intend to do in terms of new initiatives or old initiatives, adjust our planning to drive some of the objectives that are called for on the performance measures that now the legislature have put before us. Another hopefully new event going forward will be in improving state economy. Over the last couple of biennial budget processes, we've budgeted in an environment of scarcity. I'll talk more about it, but it appears that notwithstanding the fact that there are still challenges in the economy, we're hopeful that as we go into the 13-15 biennial budget, we will see some growth in state revenues. And the question for us will be, how do we present a plan that is compelling to the governor and the legislature to fund going forward, to make investments into the system? As we consider the opportunities for new investments for university colleges and extension networks in our system, we'll need to understand how the new block grant flexibility will give our UW institutions more freedom in the ways that those funds can be used. And we'll have three chancellors on a panel here a little bit later. We'll talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that I have in place, some things that they're thinking about going forward into the 13-15 biennial period, and some of the challenges that they see as we go forward, particularly in terms of our resources. And then the last piece that is new is flexibilities. We've been asking for operational flexibilities for a while. We did receive some flexibilities in this budget. We're trying to operationalize them. The new human resource system is one example of a flexibility that we're working through and doing some good work. But there are other flexibilities that we need to look at that will help us to be more efficient in the way that we do our business in the university space, and hopefully will result in the savings of dollars that can be reinvested into our core mission, which is education of our students. While we'll focus some time on what's new, there are some consistent strategic priorities that we have, and you'll recognize this slide. It focuses on the growth agenda, the need for more well-prepared college graduates in Wisconsin and a stronger workforce, and the need for well-paying jobs that support high quality of life for our students, and the need for stronger communities where citizens and businesses alike can thrive. Let's talk a little bit about performance measures. As we reported to this board on our progress towards growth agenda goals, we must also report to the legislature on a whole set of mandatory performance measures that were embedded in Act 32. What we've done is we've asked each of our institutions to focus on 4 specific measures during the 13-15 biennium. And we've received some very, very good feedback. UW system colleges and universities have responded to our request with information on what those 32 performance measures they will be, of those 32, what 4 they will be focusing on and pursuing in the 13-15 budget. And let me just give you a few examples of some of the selected measures that are included, that we are considering to include and bring before you as performance measures in the next biennium. Providing more support for Wisconsin businesses, leveraging the UW expertise to grow new businesses, spur new startups, and help existing businesses remain profitable and productive. Another strategic area that we'll be working in is improving graduation and retention rates of students. In turn, this drives the number, of course, as you know, the number of graduates by making our college pipeline more efficient. I should note here that both in retention and graduation rates, the UW system generally outperforms other system colleges and universities around the country. So we're already doing a real good job in this area. This will continue to be a focus, but there are some threats, and we'll talk about some of those. Threat to our continued success, and we'll talk about a little bit of those later. Serving more transfer students in ways that also increase efficiency while providing important flexibility for students who start at one institution but decide to finish elsewhere is another area that we'll focus some attention. With a record 17,000 transfers last year, it's clear that we need to do all that we can to do a better job in this area. The Falbo Task Force, which is also known as the Legislative Task Force, really focused a lot of attention on this issue of transfer of students. They like our transfer information system and made some very good recommendations on how we might improve that system going forward. Some of those recommendations I hope that we'll have included in our biennial budget. Some of those recommendations related to test the transfer information system. There are some other areas that in the flexibility area too that I'll talk about. There's some other initiatives in the flexibility area that I'll talk about a little bit later. One relates to procurement, that is moving procurement away from the state over to the auspices of the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents would control that. And then moving some of the capital budget away from DOA to capital budgeting and development, from DOA to the Board of Regents for control. What I'd like to do now is introduce three of our chancellors. And let me just say this. Based on the discussion with chancellors and chief business officers and UW institution leaders, it's clear that economic development is a direction that we want to go, and will be a strong emphasis in our 13-15 budget. But it's not new. UW institutions participate actively in economic development entities like New Era, have been doing it for a very long time. The Milwaukee 7, a group that was instrumental in the work that was done by Chancellor Lovell and UW-Milwaukee at the Water Institute. They work with local chambers of commerce in their cities. They also help address areas of state opportunities and need. They look for opportunities to leverage the expertise of the university with businesses to create economic activity, jobs, and strengthen businesses. As you're aware, UW-Milwaukee has been working with the City of Milwaukee to address city public health issues and needs, and is working with the business community, as I just mentioned, M7 being part of that, to develop strong freshwater sciences, further strengthening that sector of the Milwaukee economy. I've asked a few of our chancellors to discuss initiatives at their respective universities designed to meet growth agenda objectives in the 13-15 biennial budget. I've also asked them to talk a little bit about threats or obstacles that might impair their ability to reach growth agenda objectives and meet state performance measures, and why people in their communities believe that UW priority should be UW investment from the state, should be a priority investment going forward, especially in our 13-15 budget. I'd like to invite the three chancellors now to take their positions at the table. They are UW Parkside Chancellor Debbie Ford, Bernie Patterson from UW Stevens Point, and Dick Telfer from UW Whitewater. We'd like to start the discussion by inviting Chancellor Telfer to say a few words.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about a few of the economic development things we're doing at UW-Whitewater. Because of the limited time, I'm going to focus on 3 initiatives through our Innovation Center. Many of you know about our Innovation Center. It's a facility that opened last February, so it's been going over a little bit more than a year. It's about 80% occupied at this point. I'm going to talk about 3 different initiatives. One involves a student, a second involves a faculty member, and the third is a project developed by a private citizen in our community. The first project is a company called Scanalytics. It was started by Joe Scanlon. You figure out the name from that. In a nutshell, his company has developed a pressure-sensitive grid that can be placed under a mat or carpet. And what this will do, it will record traffic in front of an exhibit. The first thing he wants to go after is trade shows. So it will keep track of what people look at, how long they stay there, in some sense, who is there. He thinks there are some retail applications as well, but it feeds that into a computer. The data are stored for later analysis, but they can be real time. You can look and see the kinds of things that are going on. This was the first place winner in the BizStarts competition sponsored by Mason Wells recently, and was entered in the governor's business plan competition. We support that at the campus through something called the Launchpad. And Launchpad is something we have for our students who are interested in pursuing business ideas. They get a little bit of support to get them started. They have mentors through our faculty, and they have a location in our Innovation Center, part of a desk essentially, where they can work on their ideas. The second one I wanted to talk about is something called Foundry Solutions. And this is a company that was founded by a gentleman named Dan McGuire, who is a professor of art on our campus. He has patents in 2 technologies related to developing molds for metal casting. This came from a very real class need. They do a lot of metal casting in the sculpture area, and they needed a way to do it more quickly. The technologies he's developed allow foundries to develop molds for metal casting that are lighter and less expensive than those currently used in the industry. The current applications, ceramic shell systems, require numerous steps and several different applications of materials. By contrast, Foundry Solutions technology requires only one application and less material and saves significant amounts of time. The company is presently housed in one of the labs in our Innovation Center and is actively producing and distributing its product. Foundry Solutions has been involved with YSYS, and you're all familiar with YSYS. That was how this started, working through YSYS, and has received considerable support there. In addition, Dan McGuire is working as what we refer to as an I-Fellow in the Innovation Center, which means we've provided him with some support. For that, we have taken a share of his company. So we're involved in that as well. The third project is a company called Blackthorn Analytics. Blackthorn is a company developed by Whitewater resident Patrick Monahan that uses mathematical models to do financial management. The company is located in the Innovation Center. It actually started on our campus before we had the Innovation Center. Recently, the company has expanded so that it now occupies 3 of our innovation modules, about 2,500 square feet. Since locating at the Innovation Center, Blackthorn has employed 25 individuals associated with our campus. They have bought out time for our faculty members to work on this project. They have hired students. They have hired former students. So we've had an impact on job growth in the Whitewater community. By locating there, this company has access to some of the services we provide to everyone in the Innovation Center, but they've gone far beyond that. and they really are employing people in the area. So those are three different kinds of examples of the kind of things our campus is trying to do. You honored Denise Allen yesterday with the award. She is clearly instrumental in getting these kinds of things going, but we really are making an impact. I was asked to speak a little bit about some challenges too, and I guess I'll mention those. First, the budget cuts have limited the funding that we can provide to faculty and staff so they can be involved with these projects. Well, a company like Blackthorn that has more established funding can provide funds to buy out faculty and staff time and hire students. Some of the real early stage folks can't. And so we try to supplement that, but we have a limited amount to help with that. The second challenge really is that budget cuts have limited the opportunities we can provide for our student entrepreneurs, because when we provide them space and a little bit of financial support, we also want to provide them access to the mentorship and so forth that they need. We have some money that we've put into internships and grants, but that's very limited. Now, how could we use new resources? There are two main areas that I would mention. First is additional resources would allow us to provide more support for faculty and staff involvement with the Innovation Center. And it would really have three benefits. It would help those businesses that they work with to grow. It would also provide them with more case study examples that they can bring right back into the classroom. And it would engage more of our students in the economic development activities we're interested in. A second main area where we could use new resources is that we would provide more opportunities for students and faculty and staff to participate in research that has high potential for commercialization. So again, that's a little bit about what we're doing, what some of our issues are, what some of the things we'd like to do, and I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, Chancellor. Chancellor Ford.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to share a few examples of how the University of Wisconsin-Parkside is enhancing economic development and the quality of life in southeastern Wisconsin. At UW-Parkside, our primary role in relation to economic development is to provide a career-ready talent for regional businesses and leaders in our community. And so today I would like to share with you a few examples of how the Ralph Jaskey Solutions for Economic Growth Center, that are known as the SEG, is providing those opportunities. So the Ralph Jaskey Solutions for Economic Growth Center serves as the premier vehicle for project-based learning at UW-Parkside. Both undergraduate and MBA students learn project management skills and the importance of being able to deliver a final solution or product on time and within budget while being given hands-on work experience in finding those solutions. This past academic year, our students were involved in 84 different projects for 73 different clients. There were over 320 students involved, and 18 faculty and staff led those projects. So just to give you a sampling of what our students are doing and the companies they're working for, we had of the projects, I selected a few I thought might be of interest. We had marketing students working on a marketing design for Johnson & Johnson for a new product called Bye Bye Binky. We had a group of students working on a marketing idea for an iMower, which is a remote-controlled lawnmower using GPS technologies. Makes life easier. We also had a group of students working with the Olive Garden to be able to do promotions for a new frozen dinner line. And then we had a group of students working for a product design for a remote control locator. And that could be something all of us could use in our homes. We had a group of operations management students working to improve customer feedback with the Best Buy store in Crystal Lake. And we also, and many of you had an opportunity to meet our students during the Posters and Rotunda session for the operations review to improve the health care and the corrections system. And those students have met with several of our state representatives and representatives from the Department of Corrections, and they're actually piloting some of their suggestions to improve operations. We, too, like our partners at UW-Whitewater, have a couple of projects working with WISIS. We have a faculty member and students in computer science working on wireless medical records to be able to give folks with chronic disease access to what's happening real time anywhere. And then we have the ProCubed project, where we working to design a new wheelchair, and our students are helping with the graphic design as well as the functionality and the qualitative research for that particular project. But to give you a sampling of really what's happening and how our businesses are appreciative, I'd like to just share a few quotes from a few letters from two businesses here in southeastern Wisconsin. The first is Animal Campus in Franklin, Wisconsin, and it is an animal care facility with 4 different businesses. And the owner says that when the students from Parkside came to me and asked to do a school project for the business class, it was a great opportunity for me to get a fresh new take on the possibilities. She has implemented all of their ideas, and she says, "Thank you for having your students reach out into the real world of business. I hope they got as much out of it as we did." Another small business owner, Champion Tape in Sturtevant, had this to say: "The team did an excellent job of gathering the details of the existing process and then documenting the steps. Using some of the tools that they learned, they helped us to identify where the bottlenecks were. The benchmarking work that was done also provided very interesting and useful input for companies that faced the same challenges. They dissected the issues and came up with some solutions. Their presentation included graphs and charts, and they did a great job of presenting their suggestions in a comprehensive report." Earlier this month, this business owner implemented the tools and solution they suggested and plans to continue them with her business. Thank you for sending your students out into the community to share what they've learned. And so not only are our students helping to enhance the businesses and their operations, but our students are learning real hands-on experience, and they are ready for work when they graduate from UW-Parkside. Like Dick, I was asked to talk a little bit about the challenges. And I think it's important, though, to remind everyone that all of us, and I can say at UW-Parkside, we continue to be excellent stewards of our financial and human resources. But the continuous budget reductions have made it difficult to fully implement our strategic plan. We have had to delay some initiatives in order to respond to the budget lapses this year. But I can tell you that we are committed, and we are committed partners with our regional businesses, our educational partners, and our government leaders to grow people, grow jobs, and grow our community in southeastern Wisconsin. And it is with sustained and predictable funding investments from the state that we will be able to enhance the quality of these collective efforts. I have the good fortune of serving on most of the economic development and workforce development boards in Racine and Kenosha, and so I have a very interesting perspective, and I'm proud of how we pull all of that together. And one of the things I hear from our business leaders is that the focus on educational attainment is important to them, making sure that the graduates have higher education, both from our technical college partners and our four-year partners. And so as we receive new resources at the University of Wisconsin-Parkside, we would focus on our mission, but we would also accelerate the implementation of new online degree programs and certificate programs for adult learners that I believe are currently being underserved. In addition, I would make sure that all of our students have the opportunity for project-based learning experiences like those in the Ralph Jaskey Solutions for Economic Growth. As we implement our four-college model, we have many opportunities where students get real-world experience in their field, but we would make sure that all students had that opportunity. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Ford. Regent Vice President Smith, after Chancellor Patterson, would it be all right to open up for questions? Chancellor Patterson, and then questions of the panel.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to talk just a few minutes about some of the great things going on at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. To do so, I need to take about 30 seconds and give you a little background about how we got to where we are today. In academic year 2010-2011, I charged the campus with creating a new strategic plan, something that they had struggled with for a number of years. They undertook that under the leadership of then Provost Mark Nook. Mark did an outstanding job with this, and so did the faculty and the staff, and an outstanding product. You'll see it on one side of that handout I passed around, and I always like to brag that he not only got it done, and I gave him two requirements. One, be inclusive with external and internal constituents, and be done by May 1. They did both, and they got it on one page. Pretty phenomenal, I think. It's an excellent piece of work, but it was the foundation that took us forward after that year. And we spent this past year developing the new vision for the university. And that's done under the leadership of Interim Provost Greg Summers. Again, an excellent piece of work that we are putting under the umbrella of thriving communities. In a nutshell, we are repositioning the university. We're making the university more relevant to community problems, more responsive to community needs. We think thriving communities have a number of characteristics, but four that we're focusing on are vibrant communities that are well-grounded in the arts and the humanities. That's initiatives that will be coming in the future. Sustainable communities that we've been doing for 40 years in our College of Natural Resources, and where we have over 1,600 students enrolled. Healthy communities is the one that we're rolling out right now, and we've been involved in now for the last several months with 4 sessions on campus where we've invited nearly 100 CEOs from healthcare industry and from businesses, as well as elected officials, economic development officials, and our educational partners. And the fourth, and the one that I want to spend the rest of my time talking about, is that we think thriving communities are also prosperous, and that means economic development. We are looking for and developing a new business model for the university. We are going to become more entrepreneurial as a university. We have to think about the business side of the house much more like a business than we ever have in the past. We have just finished an efficiency study, and we're now reviewing the results of that. Huron did that for us with the help of the system office, and it has offered now several opportunities for us to do things more effectively and efficiently on campus on the business side. That means everything outside the academic programs, whether it's housing, catering, facilities, business practices, purchasing, whatever that might be. It is my intent to establish an Office of Economic Development at the university with a special assistant reporting to the chancellor. Now, on the heels of this conversation yesterday about money, I want to make perfectly clear we are not using GPR money for this. We're using funds we've generated internally that cannot be used for faculty salaries and faculty positions. But we think of it as investing money in order to generate new revenues for the university. As it was pointed out just yesterday, sometimes you have to spend some money to make some money. And so we're trying to take a page out of the business world and make it work at the university. This position will focus internally on helping us be more business-like in what we do in our everyday practices. It would also focus externally, working with people like Tim Sullivan and Paul Jaden, the system new position that's being created here in economic development, with area chambers of commerce, with local government, and primarily with businesses in central Wisconsin and beyond. It will also focus on the transfer of technology, working with our faculty to transfer that technology from our laboratories into the marketplace and into the production of real business. And it will also have a legislative focus, working with our legislators to help them understand what we're doing and help them understand how they can help us get it done. We're still trying to figure out exactly what the outcomes will this initiative will be, because at the end of the day, we want more to have happened than just to have had the conversation. We are also working on more public-private partnerships, and I want to mention just 2 of those this morning. The first is the Wisconsin Institute for Sustainable Technology. This is funded through federal and state grants and contractual services that they provide. Sustainable technologies are those that are aimed at sustainable development or step change advances in the manufacturing or production process that reduces the material or the energy and or the environmental impact of the production process or products. In other words, it's aimed directly at businesses that make a product. And at the same time, it gives the producer a differentiation in the marketplace, a competitive edge, and therefore a better bottom line. Often the work is focused on the residual materials in the manufacturing process or the byproducts or waste products, such as potato peels or cranberry leaves or cranberry skins. For example, isoprene is used to produce latex, rubber, plastics, and pharmaceuticals. Isoprene is usually derived from petroleum products, but we are producing it on our campus from paper and pulp mill waste from the waste stream that you and I know as sludge. That sludge is usually hauled to the landfills and dumped at a fee, a tipping fee that the mills have to pay. Just think if we can use that sludge to produce isoprene at the commercial level that would be used to produce things like latex and other plastics and rubbers, and that way we are not so dependable on petroleum products, but we're also being much more friendly to the environment. We're now we've taken this through the proof of concept stage in the laboratory, and we're now in discussions with a private firm that will take this to the commercial level, requiring an investment of about $5 million. Another example is the American Science and Technology Company, a private firm in Wausau that we are working with to develop biofuels, again, from the paper industry waste stream. And where we're looking to the future is that the chemicals that are used to de-ice airplanes, currently, again, coming from petroleum products, we believe we can demonstrate that these can be a similar product that will do the same job, can be produced from recyclable plastics. The second partnership I want to mention is Nelson Pade in Montello, Wisconsin. This is an aquaponics company, and if you're wondering what that is, so did I when I first heard of it, but it's the combination of aquaculture, fish farming, and hydroponics, the growing of plants without soil in a soilless environment. So yes, we are growing fish and plants together in the same integrated soilless system, although they are segregated in the process. But this is a year-round endeavor in a greenhouse environment. That means it can be done in any climate, in any kind of climate. It can be done on any scale, from someone's backyard as a family to feeding a village to a commercial undertaking. And it's done with no pesticides, no herbicides, and no irrigation, which is particularly important in the Central Sands area of central Wisconsin. Our faculty from the Northern Aquaculture Demonstration Facility on the shores of Lake Superior are working with this company on research and development, and particularly on the training of the people who buy these systems. So every time this system is sold, a new small business is created. It's also providing excellent hands-on experiences for our own students, and we offered the first academic course in this area just this past semester. And now for a few of the challenges that we are facing as it relates to our efforts on campus to provide a quality education for our students. I spoke of the main hurdle we're struggling with just yesterday when I talked about the chemistry courses and how they were oversubscribed. They represent just one example. Our situation in biology is even more profound than it is in chemistry. But in addition to the bottleneck courses, we're also challenged with being able to provide sufficient hands-on experiences for our students, the experiences that prepares them for a career after graduation. That's usually in the form of undergraduate research or other external experiences. We also had to close our teaching center as a result of the budget situation. The center that where faculty come together as peers and talk about and develop new teaching strategies and pedagogy. It was the quality control piece on campus as it relates to teaching, and not being able to sustain that center will have a long-term effect on what we're able to do. We've also had to reduce the areas in our alumni office, which means less development, less fundraising, which hardly seems to be the right direction. And what concerns me is the reduction in a planned security system for campus. And we all know what that means. So there are challenges. The action this board took yesterday will help us sustain what we're doing right now, but more needs to be done if we're going to move this state forward and our system forward and provide the education that our students so rightfully deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chancellor Patterson.
President Riley, I'd like to make a few comments.
Two quick thoughts. Chancellor Telfer and Chancellor Ford both mentioned WISIS, and I'm mindful that we have new regents in Do the new Regents know what that is? Have you heard of it? Most of you do? Okay, good. That's fine. I won't say anything about that then. But the link I wanted to make to the work that WISIS does in helping all of our campuses outside of Madison and Milwaukee that have their own research foundations, those two in effect, but all the other campuses develop intellectual property that the faculty and staff might be working on to see whether it might be commercializable, is a link between that and undergraduate education. And often how well you do in undergraduate education is often pitted against how well you do in research or how much research you're doing. And I think one of the geniuses of this system at the leadership of chancellors like the three you see here is that we've figured out great ways to get undergraduates directly involved with top-notch researchers at many of the institutions, so much so that we've been recognized by the Council on Undergraduate Research, which is a major national organization, for the work we've done. And we've hosted meetings of the Council on Undergraduate Research at our campuses. Our chancellors have taken groups of students to national meetings elsewhere of the Council on Undergraduate Research. So, and we know that one of the high-impact practices, as they're called in higher education, that get more students to success, learning more, is involvement in some kind of serious undergraduate research project with a faculty mentor. So I think this is one thing we're doing right, and it's part of economic development in that larger sense, and it's a way that economic development intersects directly with the experience of undergraduates at each institution.
Any questions or comments of from the board? Yes.
Just following on what President Riley said, I'm always fascinated to hear about the research projects in which students can get involved and learn science, technology, engineering. Those are always up front in the showcase. But I'm wondering about projects involving humanities. I'm sorry to hear that the teaching center at UWSP is closing. I mean, I think that as we consider ways to get undergraduates involved in research and real-world projects, I think we have to also keep in mind those projects in the humanities and see if there are things that we might be doing that we're not doing to provide those kinds of experiences for undergraduates. Do you have any comments on that?
I would say that the addition to our learning environment of the Rita Talent Picken Regional Center for Arts and Humanities is evidence of the opportunities for students to get engaged with the humanities and the arts. So when you have a chance to come to our campus, you'll be able to see that students are designing costumes, they're designing the sets for plays, they're reaching out, they're working with K through 12 students in music and arts. And so I would say that we have those same opportunities that are happening. You just hear more about the ones in science and the ones maybe in business more so than those. But I'll take that as a challenge to make sure that I bring some evidence of that.
The piece that I would add to that is in undergraduate research, clearly the humanities are and the social sciences are very prominent. But I would also say in the part that I was talking about, which is what's going on through the Launchpad, we've got projects that are related to the humanities that are there. One that kind of touches, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it, but we have students, including a significant number of international students, who are developing a way to try to help international students come into this country and communicate across campuses, including this group speaks 7 languages, and what they're trying to do is help students who are coming, wherever they're coming from, learn how to get adjusted to American education. So that's one that bridges a number of different areas. So I think there are a lot of them out there.
You'll notice in the handout that I had that talks about thriving communities, one of the 4 pillars represents the vibrant aspect of the community, and that aims directly at the arts and the humanities. And so we'll be developing initiatives in that area. But we are already engaged in a significant way on our campus in the humanities. Just last week we announced the Mel Laird Outstanding Artist Award for the 2nd year now. I went to a young lady just this is intended for those who are graduating, to help launch their career. This is a $5,000 award made possible by Mel's contributions to the campus. So there's lots of opportunities, I think, for our students to see this. What we want to do is not just have it on campus and invite people to come. We want to take the arts all the way up through the northern part of the state, as far as we can go, and have that experience in those small communities in the northern half of this state, because they will never come to campus. So it's our obligation to go to where they are, I think.
Anything else?
Any other? Thank you very much, Chancellor. As you can see, our chancellors are involving themselves in innovative approaches to both providing quality education to the students, but also providing valuable services and partnerships with local businesses to, as I indicated earlier, encourage economic growth and activity in their respective parts of the state of Wisconsin. In the 13-15 biennium, we will deploy resources to drive some of the ideas that the chancellors you've heard from here today have outlined their ideas, and those that we know will be forthcoming from other UW system colleges, universities, and extension. Here's the challenge. Resources. What's changed? The economic environment that we saw ourselves in the last 2 years ago, when we started our discussion about the 11-13 budget, was grim. The nation was in the grips of a great recession. Unemployment in the state of Wisconsin, in the nation, was about over 8%, near 9%. The stock market was at a significant low at about 9,900, which was about 19% below where we had started the previous budget in 2008. Revenue projections for the state were anemic. In fact, the Legislative Reference Bureau in January 2010 projected that revenue growth in the first year of the biennium that we're in now would be at about 0.2%. UW institutions did their share in helping out with the state budget. We took a $250 million cut in our biennial budget. Today, things are a little bit different. There are some volatilities, but here's where we are. The state over the last year has seen or experienced job growth. Unemployment in the state is at 6.7%, which is a significant improvement over 8.8% what we saw 2 years ago. And the state expects to see revenue growth in the next biennium of somewhere between 3 to 3.5%. In fact, if we go back to this biennium, the last year, this biennium, the state is expected to end the year with a surplus, which was projected by the Fiscal Bureau as well as the Department of Administration. If we do see 3.5% growth in the next biennium, a question that we need to ask ourselves is, are the initiatives that we saw here today and others that we will see forthcoming that will drive the growth agenda, that will help us realize the expectations that the state has put in front of us in terms of our performance measures? How do we capture investment from the state? And what should the investment requests be from this board to the state? A modest investment of the state should help us to keep a trajectory that will allow us to meet the objectives that we've laid out for ourselves in the growth agenda, as well as delivering on the performance measures offered by the state. Over the next month and a half, the latter part of June, July, and August, so I guess it's 2 months, we'll engage in discussions with all of you around the board about where we should be in terms of our requests to the state. And keep in mind, our GPR requests from the state will impact on the kind of tuition decisions that will have to be made by this board. It's clear that there's much work to be done in UW system, but it's equal to drive some of the growth agenda and performance measures. But it's equally clear that we are in a period of scarcity and resources are needed. I guess I forgot to advance the slide. I said all that already. GPR grant flexibilities. Real briefly on this. As we've discussed in the past, one of the most important flexibilities that we requested and was provided to UW system in the 11-13 budget, or Act 32, was the ability to use state taxpayer support in a more flexible kind of a way to allow our chancellors to deploy dollars in a way consonant with their plans on campuses, as opposed to us at UW system dictating through what I'll try to explain a little bit later, DINs, how those dollars should be invested. In the current budget cycle, we're transitioning away from that old DIN system to the block grant system. And for those of you who remember previous biennial budget presentations, you'll recall how we presented the budget with a package of new initiatives and programs with the idea that we would seek designated state funding or a combination of state funding and tuition to support those new ideas. Those new ideas were called decision item narratives. I don't know what creative mind came up with that title, but the DINs tended to shape our budget. In the 2013-15 biennial budget, we'll use a new block grant allocation method for moving dollars to our campus. That's why it was so important that you had an opportunity here this morning to hear from our chancellor some of the ideas that they have. Because from now on, in our budgeting process, we will talk about what the overall strategy or strategic approach we might want to take that will drive our biennial budgets, but we will depend on chancellors to give us ideas, to help us to understand how we will work together on their campuses to put in place initiatives that are intended to, once again, drive the growth agenda and also get at the state performance measures. In addition to those new proposals for new spending and GPR support, we're going to have to advance from this board, consider it to the governor and the Department of Administration, additional dollars to cover debt service and other inflationary increases for items over which we have little or no control. In fact, you heard yesterday from Vice President Frida Harris, who talked about debt dollars that were dropped into the fiscal year 13 budget from the Department of Administration, and also dollars for utilities. Those decisions are made by DOA. They do an analysis, and they help us to understand, so what are those dollars that you're going to need in your budget to continue to do the things that you're doing? No new things, but those things moving forward. We used to call them cost to continue, but we decided to move away from using that phrase and try to explain to you what it is that we're talking about when we use the phrase cost to continue. In the past biennium, Regents submitted, and this is another change that I think that we need to talk about it. In the past biennium, Regents submitted a biennial budget request, and then later on, in a second set of recommendations to the Office of State Employee Relations for pay plan funding, we submitted another budget request. With the new university personnel system coming online on July 1st, 2013, we hope that we'll be able to, in this budget, to integrate our compensation plan into the block grant budgeting. Of course, the legislature will continue to have a review, but they will review that compensation plan in the context of our overall operating budget, our capital budget, so that there would be no need for a review by JOCR, the Joint Committee on Employee Relations, on a separate budget item. So those are some of the new pieces that are already in place and will be part of our new approach in moving forward with the budget. Any questions about the approach or the ideas that we have. Yes, Regent Whitburn.
Mike, if you could just clarify where the statute is as of this morning with regard to pay plan, rest of state government, and pay plan flexibility at the university. So we set the university aside. You do the biennial budget. You've got the capital budget that goes through the building commission.
Yes.
And then pay plans for state employees is a separate, distinct piece of legislation.
Yes, it is. It's a fall. I'm sorry.
That's been the ongoing operating procedure and program, and the university's has it not been part of that?
That's correct.
Paper. And so as of what they've legislated to date, in other words, what we've got on the books today, are we going to be aloof from the former pay plan parameters with the rest of state government?
If you are defining aloof meaning that we will follow the old process in this biennial budget, yes, we will be separate, aloof, distinctly separated from the state's pay plan. And we're hoping that during the course of the budget process, as we get towards June 30th, and our new personnel system will be in place, that we would have gained the authority to do exactly as you just pointed out. We think we have the authority to do so, but we would want to have that affirmed by the legislature through either a separate piece of legislation or through the budget process.
Thank you.
Any other questions about anything I've talked about? Just real quickly, if there are no other questions, as President Riley indicated yesterday during a discussion regarding FY13, the annual FY13 budget, UW system institutions have a very low administrative cost as a percentage of overall costs. In the spirit of continuing that, we have asked the state through the last budget submission, and we will continue that in this budget submission, for what we call operational flexibilities. There are two operational flexibilities that we will be pursuing in this budget. Two operational flexibilities that were endorsed by the Falbo Commission. One relates to procurement. We're asking that UW System Board of Regents be given full authority to manage procurement for university system institutions. If we are successful in ending that flexibility, we believe that we can save through efficiencies and the elimination of redundancies about $3 million. We will, of course, submit to any audit plan that the state might have on an annual or biannual basis. We believe that we can manage our procurement in a way that will allow us to be efficient, and number two, allow us to save dollars that can be invested into our core mission. The second proposal relates to capital budget and construction. Under current law, the Department of Administration contract for architectural and engineering services on all projects. And they also then, after the development has been enumerated to the Building Commission, the work has been done in architectural and engineering, they go on and DOA manages construction. We're asking that the first piece of that process, the management of architectural services and engineering on businesses, on buildings in our system, be done by professionals in our system. Partnerships between our capital budget folks, led by David Miller, and professionals on our campuses. And David can elaborate more on this. Hopefully I'm not butchering it too much. In fact, I think I've been pretty straight in terms of what it is we're asking for. We think that a couple of things will happen. We'll be much more efficient in our design of our buildings because we'll have the folks who are going to be using the buildings who are going to be occupying the space actually involved intimately in the design. And we are also hopeful that our work will help in helping Department of Administration in their second part of the phase, and that is to build the structures. So those are two very important pieces that you'll see. There may be others that will be forthcoming in the budget, but those are the kind of operational flexibilities that we're looking for that we think makes a lot of sense from a business perspective and will continue to drive down, hopefully, operational costs and business costs for the UW system. The goals and recommendations in this that we're thinking about, not quite in the 13-15 annual budget, we think will align well with some of the ideas that we see emanating from this board. We will confirm that, of course, over the next couple of months as we talk more to you about it. And then there's one other challenge that we have forthcoming. You heard a little bit about it, and that is quality, particularly as it relates to personnel on our campuses, faculty and others. Obviously, we have some challenges in that respect, both in terms of our ability to recruit, retain good quality faculty, and having sufficient faculty so that we don't have some of the challenges that we've experienced at Stevens Point and other campuses in our system. So you'll hear a lot about quality, particularly as it relates to the classroom, labs, those folks who are most important in dispensing educational value on our campuses. So, with that said, I'll stop and ask if there are any questions. We'll continue the dialogue. Regent Drew.
Do we have any data on the retention of faculty or the number of faculty that are leaving? I mean, we hear a lot about that anecdotally, but do we have any data on how many are leaving via retirement or just leaving to go to other opportunities?
Well, I'll ask if we have any information that we can report here today from Al Chris, who is our Vice President of Human Resources, Associate Vice President for Human Resources.
Thanks for the almost promotion. We have requested our institutions to provide us some of those data so we can pull them in and have them available for our August report. We're gathering some of that now to get to that very specific question.
Okay. Thank you.
Could I just jump in quickly on that, Regent, too? Another aspect of this that we're trying to get better data on, too, because we hear a lot about this side of it anecdotally, is what's going on in our searches. That is, because of salaries, people not being able to hire their first or second choice in a search, some larger number of searches crashing because there's nobody finally that is willing to take the job. And that, obviously, that over time, if it is a significant problem, really deteriorates quality. So we need better data on all that, and we'll try to get it.
What we're doing, well, I can repeat what's already been said. We're working mighty hard to accumulate data that will show that the impacts that we've talked about. We can't get, the folks that we need, and we're having difficulty retaining quality in the classroom. Any other questions? Yes.
I guess I'm puzzled. I mean, don't we have the capacity to mine the data? How many tenured faculty left in the last year to date?
That's exactly what we're doing. We're mining the data.
It wouldn't be a big deal, would it? I mean, can't you hit a couple of keys and spit that out?
Well, it might appear to be not a big deal, but it's a moderate deal. And it's taken a little bit more time than I had anticipated, but I think Al and his team are working real hard to make sure that we have that data within the next couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, so that when we come back before you in August with recommendations, it'll be best based on our analysis of that data.
Mike, isn't one of the problems there is a lot of this isn't just data, it's the crashing, it's the indirect impacts of going out and searching, not finding. There's just more than data there. You've got to interpret it.
Well, yeah, obviously we'll have to interpret it. Here's what data won't capture, right? We know that if we look at some of the our institution's peers, that their median salaries are our median salaries compared to theirs are much lower. When we go to the marketplace to hire a chemistry professor, right, with the salaries that we pay, we don't know how many potential candidates out there decide, no, we're not going to apply. We know that we get applications, right? But we're not sure we're getting the most competitive applicants, if you understand what I'm saying, right? There are just folks who just won't get involved in a competition because they know that that's not a salary that they will contemplate.
And you have the compression issue, too.
And then we have compression issues on the inside. So if you try to bring someone, right, if you try to bring someone in from the outside into recruitment at a higher salary, right, you run into other challenges in the institution. Compression is just potentially one of the challenges. So it's a complex mix of facts and observations that we have to look at to come up with something that makes a lot of sense in terms of a recommendation on how we address the issue. But the point I'm trying to make here today is that we need to address the issue. It's gone unaddressed for far too long, and it's creating a challenge with our faculty and staff on campuses.
Are we going to hear from Mr. Miller over here?
And now we have David Miller to provide a brief discussion on the capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very conscious of the time, and I'm going to try to be expedient. I can't go too fast or you'll get motion sickness. You'll understand what that means in a minute. For new regents, chancellors, provosts, and everyone else, the purpose of this presentation is to provide the basis and justification for planning to understand what you will be asked to review, consider, and approve in August, to understand how that comes to be. There are 3 statutory requirements that we follow that guide general planning. The first is that there's a legislative requirement for the state and all agencies to do long-range planning, and that those plans are supported by successive legislatures. The next is we have to report our proposals by September 15th of even-numbered years, so that explains the timeline we're on. And finally, that the Board of Regents have a process that this board reviews and approves all recommendations that go to the state and the Building Commission. To understand UW system facilities, we look at what do we have now. We have 58 million square feet of space. About 37 million of that is academic space, or what we call GPR supported, state tax dollar supported. And about 20 million is student life and auxiliaries. To give you a context of the impact of a single biennial capital budget, let's look at the current one, 11-13, which was a fairly large capital budget. But when we apply it to facilities on a square footage basis, we had 13 major academic projects. The total impact of those touched 2.8% of our academic space. So the reason I do this looks like large dollars, and this is large dollar. This is a lot of money. But the impact in the scale of what we own and operate is the relativity I'm trying to show here. We are able to do a lot more upkeep, maintenance, and modernization of our student life facilities simply because there's a revenue source to support it. So we had 21 major projects that touched 5.5% of space. We're about 65% of all state facilities. This shows how funding breaks out over 5 biennia for the university and all other state purposes. We are the red colors, and all other state facilities are the blue shades. Just to give you a scale, 9/11 was one of the largest capital budgets ever. but you can see a relative stability there and predictability of funding that I'll come back to. There's absolutely no political intent by the use of color. This shows the looming problem in higher education nationally. This is every university in the country, is we built all these buildings in the late 50s to the early 70s for on a 30 and 40 year predictable, useful life. They were not built flexibly. It's a lot of poured concrete that are very difficult to remodel, and campuses are inundated with these buildings. And the constant decision is always to demolish or replace. So how do we put a budget together? How do we even begin to grapple with what's a request from the state? Well, the state has two primary sources of revenue for capital projects. General fund supported borrowing is that debt that is repaid with taxpayer dollars. That is about 40% of our budget generally. Program revenue supported borrowing is the same. This is a really critical point. We don't have revenue bonding for our university projects. This program revenue borrowing is really a ledger accounting exercise. It's the same general obligation bond issued by the state, backed by the good faith and credit of the state, as the previous taxpayer-supported bond. So it's a very important distinction, because that causes policymakers, legislators, to look at those bonds as, well, that's state debt, even though there's a source of revenue supporting all of it, and taxpayer funds don't contribute to it. There's currently two major categories of projects, those that are major, defined in statute as constructing new space and over $760,000. In the second category of all agency, there is a bureaucrat's agreement that we can do larger projects than that through the all-agency program, because those funds are enumerated by the legislature, but the largest we can generally do is $3 million, and I'll say more about that in a moment. So we look at how have other capital budgets fared in predicting what to ask for in the future. And this note at the bottom is a guideline. It is not even an administrative rule. It's not in statute. It's not in policy. But it is closely adhered to by the Department of Administration and the legislature as another informal agreement that determines the size of a biennial capital budget, and that is that general fund supported debt should be about 4% of general purpose revenue in that year. And that is calculated every year. So just looking at the bottom line here, this is the total state new general fund supported borrowing approved in each biennia, and we're using this to predict about $535 million for the entire state, including UW major projects, for which $98 million is already on the books, advance enumerated. So we have to determine how much to ask for in major projects and how much to ask for in all agency. The all agency is a fund that's shared by all state agencies, of which the university gets about 60% for maintenance projects. So looking at this specific biennium, we see the $98 million that's already enumerated for these three projects. We have to fill in this, and we have to determine all agency projects and utilities and classroom renovations. So we're using $400 million new general fund supported borrowing as our base to determine a predictable amount to request. The reason this is important is a very brief history. The university used to submit long lists of projects in some type of queue to the Department of Administration, and the Department of Administration would determine a level of funding, and it would pour down the queue as far as it would go, and things would move up. That failed about 4 biennia ago, and the state said, that is not good planning. Good planning is really setting your priorities and sticking to them and determining where the funds, limited funds, should be applied. And if you don't want to do that, then we, the Department of Administration, will. That board of regents, many of you were here at the time, said no. That's our prerogative as a board, our prerogative as a board to do that, and that's why we take this funding seriously and don't just submit big, long wish list of projects. So the institutional needs so far surpass any amount of money that we could get. It makes this job very difficult. The request that we received for funding just for this biennium from the institutions were 22 major projects for $769 million and 19 student life and auxiliaries for $530 million. And in your folders yesterday were the list of the actual projects that were requested. So our job, and I will tell you we're actually farther behind preparing this for August than we've ever been, because this is becoming increasingly difficult, because you'll see some numbers on there that are quite large, and the larger the projects get, the fewer projects there are. So it's becoming a very difficult exercise. This is the process we use. The board approves a set of ranking criteria that is vetted by starting with campus planners, campus vice chancellors, the chancellors, and eventually explained and receives regent approval. Would say that this is not a mathematical formula that spits out some list. It is a tool that's used to determine what I call slotting. When should a project go has a lot of factors. We are charged with developing a 6-year plan. Priority implies that one is necessarily more important than the other. That's not really what it is. It's when can the campus absorb the project. For example, if that project has to empty a building, then funding it is no good until they're ready to empty the building. So we slot these projects using this tool to prioritize the order of them, but then also look at how can they best be managed. With maintenance. Maintenance is talked about a lot, and it's something that we have to change, and we're very glad to report, not to steal Regent Falbo's thunder, but the Legislative Task Force has, and the Department of Administration, more importantly, has agreed to support a statutory change in the way we fund maintenance projects to increase the viability of them and really start working on backlog maintenance. So what does that streamlining look like? Currently, we have these 2 categories of funding, this small amount for major projects, and then we receive this all-agency funding, and it comes to us, whatever money we get, suppose that's $100 million, and I get a letter and says, you should develop projects and use this money, but here are the rules. You can't do over $3 million. And you have to use these categories, and they tell me how much in each category. And what that ends up doing is trying to fit square pegs into round holes and doing bad projects. So when we presented this to the task force, and again, we're glad that DOA is willing to go down this road with us, we're proposing make major projects, those over $1 million, but only new square footage. So we don't have to we should not have to enumerate anything we do in existing buildings, new square footage. And then give us basically a block grant of general fund borrowing that this board and the building commission will approve each project for, but let us do the right projects. I'll come back to that in just a second. So if we look at examples of the projects we do, let me give you an example of a very important all-agency project. If we go up to River Falls, in their chiller plant, we were able to put in an entirely new chiller plant to serve the campus through the all-agency program. A very important project for the campus. If we look at Madison as an example of a major project that many of you are familiar with, the School of Human Ecology. We took an existing historic building in the old part of campus, and created a beautiful, sympathetic addition that doubled the space of the building and totally renovated the existing building. This was very complex. The funding was spread over 3 biennia. It took a lot of agreements to do this and get it done, but it's a great example of the impact of facilities. And of course, this week at Milwaukee, there's no greater impact, no greater example than the impact of facilities on a campus and the academic program than here at Milwaukee this week. At UW-Whitewater, this is an example of what we want to move to. This is Carlson Hall, an existing building that was vacated when the College of Business and Economics was created. If we didn't have the authority to do the whole building at once, this would have gone for years as piecemeal. You would do plumbing one biennia, you would do HVAC another biennia, and by the way, you can't move any walls when you're doing that HVAC because that would be called remodeling, and we don't do remodeling through the all-agency program. We've got to blow that up, and I'm glad that we're headed in that direction so that we can do whole buildings at a time and don't go back in them for 20 years and be done. Now, in the current law, this lost about a year, even though I had accumulated, not I, the state had accumulated the money through savings of other projects. This still had to be enumerated by the legislature because it was a major project. That's the kind of thing we'd like to move forward with when we're ready. It totally guts the building, and we're going to end up with a new building by saving the old one at the end of the day. And this is the rendering of the new building and what that old building will look like. It will be completely new. Some examples of classroom programs. We have about 1,600 classrooms. We've probably touched about half of them, and about that many are untouched. But this is the kind of thing we can do in a classroom. This is an active learning classroom, and I'm sorry, Nick, this is not in Superior's Old Main. I just put it there, but it's not there now. But it's what we could do. We did this at the Health Sciences Center at Madison. We have an abundance of these old lecture halls, and many of you and me sat in those. It is not up to date, and it is not what our students are demanding, and it is not the standard that we want to meet. But this is that same lecture hall, renovated through a remodeling project with all new AV, new ADA accessibility, new technology, but reusing the old lecture hall. And of course at Milwaukee, you've seen the School of Freshwater Science that we all have learned about this week. And finally, this all rests at the state capitol. You know, we have got to continue to advocate for the capital budget. Again, I think we've seen a great demonstration this week of what the impact of those facilities are on instruction and recruitment of deans and so forth. Any questions? Thank you for your indulgence.
David, we had a question from Regent Higgins yesterday about debt service. Total bonding exposure that we have today, right now in place.
I don't know off the top of my head, so I'm not going to guess. And it's very difficult to know because the state does not issue bonds for projects. The state issues very large blocks of bonding, 500, 600, 700 million at a time, and holds that in reserve and even invests that sometimes and earns money on it while they're holding it. And then as projects are approved, they simply, on the ledger, move that debt to the project. The university doesn't manage its debt, and the state manages debt in a total capacity. There's been a lot of refinancing, obviously, over the years. Every month on the building commission, there's often a refinancing authorization. And so it's very hard to know, well, what is the actual university share of that? I don't know, but I can work with Department of Administration and get that information, but it's not something that we track.
Any other questions for Dave? Michael, are you done here?
Thank you. That was easy.
Great. Thank you. Now, don't anybody go anywhere. We are going to officially recess and then reconvene right here for a meeting of the READY Committee. As we did last month, we are meeting as a committee of the whole. And Secretary Radu, would you please call the roll for that committee meeting?
Regent Bartel. Regent Bailey. Regent Bradley.
Here.
Regent Drew.
Here.
Regent Evers. Regent Falbo.
Here.
Regent Higgins.
Here.
Regent Rybar.
Here.
Regent Manydeed. Regent Milner.
Here.
Regent Pointer.
Here.
Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Roberts.
Here.
Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Tyler.
Here.
Regent Vasquez.
Here.
Regent Walsh. Regent Whitburn.
Here.
The quorum is present.
All right. As the main event for the READY Committee today, our hosts at UW-Milwaukee are going to tell us more about some of the important work that's being done here, and to lead that and to introduce that, don't sit down over there, Chancellor Lovell.
Well, thanks, Brent. And as a way to describe some of the things we're doing around economic development and some of the things, initiatives here in Milwaukee, we have two individuals speaking to you today. Brian Thompson, who leads our UWM Research Foundation, and David Gilbert, who leads our UWM Foundation. And just to give you some context about how these two organizations, the Research Foundation and Foundation, are helping us move forward in a direction that's very positive for the university. I like to tell the story about back in 2008 when I came to interview to Milwaukee for the Dean of Engineering position, and the very first meeting I had was a lunch with Brian Thompson and Dave Gilbert. I remember sitting down at lunch with them and first turning to Brian and saying, well, Brian, he was leading this fledgling, about a year-old research foundation. So how many licenses have you done? He said 0. How many patents have you done? Do we have for university? He said 0. And I turned to Dave. I said, Dave, one of the reasons I want to come here is Innovation Park. Where are we? He said, well, we don't own the land yet, and we don't have any buildings, underway yet. And I think when you think about what they're going to present today and what has happened in the 4 years since I came to interview here back in 2008 and what they've been able to accomplish and the way they've been able to help the university move forward in so many important ways, both for our faculty, staff, and students, but also for making an impact on the economics of the region. I think you'll be equally as proud as I am about the progress we've been able to make as a campus. So I'd like to bring forth first Dave Gilbert and then Brian Thompson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chancellor Lovell, and thank you to the committee for the opportunity to address you today. Brian and I consider it a great privilege to be able to show you some of the work we're doing here in support of UW-Milwaukee. Specifically, we want to tell you about our UWM family of foundations and how we're building partnerships that not only enhance the university's research portfolio, but go a long way to drive economic development for the region. So first, a logical question is, who are we? Who is the UWM family of foundations? Well, since 1974, we've had the UWM Foundation, which is a traditional university-related foundation, a 501c3. Its mission is to raise funds, manage the endowment, disperse those funds according to the donor's wishes, and be our advocates and ambassadors to the community. But in 2005, we did a national scan and looked around the country at other university-related foundations and how they're supporting their public institutions in different ways. And we settled on two areas where we thought we could really add value to the university. The first was in holding and developing real estate and facilities on behalf of the university. There are some times when you can do these things without state funds, off of state land, and we can get them done at no cost to the taxpayer, and that is advantageous. So we created, in 2005, we created the UWM Real Estate Foundation. And in 2006, we created the UWM Research Foundation to be our patenting and licensing arm, with the added mission of enhancing the research portfolio, is seeding research, promising research here at UWM. So all these foundations are affiliate corporations. The UWM Foundation appoints the boards of directors of the affiliates, so we keep everything tightly aligned to the university and all three organizations moving in the same direction. So first I'll tell you a little bit about the UWM Real Estate Foundation. Our mission is quite broad. We're able to pursue any type of real estate or facility development that supports the university, whether that's academic space, student residence halls, research space, research parks, etc. Our first project was to create new student residence halls. We've had to ask this Board of Regents for a waiver for many, many years to the rule that says all freshmen must live on campus because we simply didn't have enough dorms. So in 2005, we started with, we bought a piece of property down by the Milwaukee River about a mile from campus, and we built Riverview Hall. And 2 years later, we bought another piece of property on the other side of the river, and we built Cambridge Commons. And at the time, there was some debate on whether that was the best area to put new residence halls, because some people felt it was somewhat transitional. But what's happened since then is we've activated that entire corridor with 1,200 students, and now the land has become so valuable that the city has increased the height limits so that developers can build even more retail and office and other kinds of medical space there. So we really, if you think about it, in the worst economic climate in a generation, we were able to pump $80 million worth of development into the city of Milwaukee, create hundreds of construction jobs and dozens of permanent jobs for people who run these facilities. So this is something that we're really quite proud of. Now that we've met that goal, we're going to take a hiatus on building residence halls for a while and focus more on our much more ambitious project, probably the most ambitious project we'll ever undertake, and that's to create what we're calling our innovation campus. This is a fanciful rendering of what the campus may look like one day. Right now it's raw land, there's no road. The only building there is the one in the center, the historic building, which the county parks office occupies. But the idea is to create a public-private partnership on that campus where industry, academia, nonprofits, other institutions of higher education, government labs, all kinds of different research entities can co-locate, collaborate, and the whole will be greater than the sum of the parts. And really what we're doing in terms of the history of research parks, we're trying to create what we call a third-generation research park. First-generation research parks, you think of Research Triangle down in North Carolina. They're predominantly before 1980, and they were really real estate ventures. They were developer-led. They certainly had university names on them, but the association was pretty thin, really. The second generation of research parks, you think of RPI out in New York, were actually owned by the university or the affiliate of the university, but there was really no co-location of the academia and the industry partners. They were very, very separate. If you were doing academic work, you stayed on the main campus. If you're doing commercial work, you stayed out in the research park. And more recently, since the, say, late 90s, this third generation of research parks, and you think of Centennial Campus down in North Carolina State as being sort of the vanguard of this third generation research park right now. It takes industry and academia and puts them not only in the same park, not only in the same buildings, but often in the same labs, working together and using each other's resources to generate more research and more economic activity. So this is an aerial view of a portion of the city of Wauwatosa, just about 10 miles west of here. It's commonly known as Milwaukee County ground. It's a very important piece of property. Just to orient you, that's Route 45 running north and south there, and running east and west is Watertown Plank Road. And the reason this is such an important area is because in the southeastern quadrant of the Milwaukee County grounds, that's the Regional Medical Center, and that's where some of our most important partners are located. So it's the Medical College of Wisconsin, Froedtert Hospital, Children's Hospital, Children's Research Institute, the Blood Research Institute, a host of others. It's really the center of clinical research in southeastern Wisconsin, 200 million plus in clinical research. It's an academic, true academic medical center. Across the way, we have the Milwaukee County Research Park, home to a massive GE facility, probably the largest business incubator in the state, and scores of other research-oriented companies. So you can see there really is a nexus of activity going on here. And what you have is a situation where you have an independent medical college an academic medical center without a comprehensive research university, and you have a comprehensive research university, UWM, without an academic medical center. And if you take a look at any of the roadmaps of funding for the NIH or corporate funding or any type of medical research, it used to be able to, you could do basic research or you could do clinical research. Now it's all translational. They want to see it go from the lab bench to the bedside. So really this is a partnership that is very important. And increasingly we're seeing that they want to see it go from the lab bench to the bedside to the marketplace. And that's where we feel our innovation campus can really have a significant impact. So the UWM Real Estate Foundation purchased this 89 acres of land directly across the street. We feel that this will really be the nexus of discovery and innovation in southeastern Wisconsin. We're going to be leveraging the billions of dollars that have been spent at the regional medical center and all the commerce and activity that go on across the way in the research park. So this is the master plan for the campus, and if you follow the media reports, it can be quite confusing because they change the acreage and they change the purpose, but it's a very complex project and a complex piece of property. So the UWM Real Estate Foundation owns the entire 89-acre parcel. However, the DOT is going to take 17 acres off the side to redo the zoo interchange. And really that's a benefit to us because that's going to be a free-flow interchange and allow access in and out of our campus in a very easy manner, and I think it's going to be very attractive for our industrial partners. Second, you may have read there's some very environmentally sensitive land on this parcel. The monarch butterfly actually migrates from Mexico to Canada, and hundreds of thousands of them land on this one piece of property. And it's not well known, but UWM actually manages 3,000 acres of the Cedarburg Bog. And so we've engaged those faculty to not only preserve this habitat, but enhance it for our future generations. It's something we're very proud of. You may have read in the papers lately there's some historic buildings on there. Sadly, they've been abandoned for more than a dozen years. Our goal is to redevelop them for residential use. If you look at the sort of mantra for research parks now, it's live, learn, work, play. This would be our live component. We've partnered with a very respected development group, the Mandel Group, who's been exploring ways to do this. The goal is to save all the buildings and build infill buildings. It might not be possible to save them all, but we're going to do the best we can. Environmentally sensitive development is important to UW-Milwaukee and the Real Estate Foundation. We've made a commitment to manage all our stormwater on the property in novel ways, bioswales and other sort of cutting-edge technology, so we really feel that we'll be a leader in that area. Parking decks, nobody likes them, nobody likes to pay for them, but sadly we will have to have a few parking decks there to get the density that we want. So the campus is really sort of broken into two parts. There's the research and commercial part on the lower end of the campus, and that we want to have really a collegiate feel. We want the tree-lined boulevards, quadrangle designs, people walking through, very public and densely developed. And then as you go up the hill towards the environmentally sensitive area and the residential area, it'll have a more sort of prairie, natural feel, recreational feel that will be a nice area for the people who learn and work to recreate and enjoy some of the natural aspects of the property. Lastly, I'd like to talk about our very first building. This is an actual renovation, a rendering of what the building will actually look like. Like Whitewater, we were fortunate to get a $5.4 million Economic Development Administration grant to build this building. We call it an Innovation Accelerator. And the purpose of this building is to put faculty in a space where they can work with industry. So if you have a service that's either going to attract industry or help it grow or spin it out, those are the faculty we want to put here. It's a small building, a 25,000 square foot building, but it's going to have a significant impact in the way UW-Milwaukee faculty are able to interact with industry. And I'm going to now turn over the mic to Brian Thompson, who will talk more about the faculty that are in that building and certainly about our commercialization activities. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you for an opportunity to share with you some of what we're doing. As Dave said at the beginning, the UWM Research Foundation, our mission complements both the growth of research at UWM as well as the commercialization. We are here to foster innovation, research or the discovery of ideas, and innovation, the translation of those ideas to the broadest possible audience, typically through commercialization activities. when we talk about economic development, it's really a question of how do we build on where UWM's strengths are. So what I'm going to show you here is a little picture of UWM's research strengths. I'm going to look at funded research, and I have to respectfully acknowledge that UWM is a broad university with lots of strengths in the arts and humanities, and funded research is only one of the ways to look at that. So I have to start with that acknowledgement. But that said, as we look at economic development and how we connect with industry, it's certainly instructive to look at where the money gets spent and how that clusters in certain areas. The UWM has about a $70 million research program, and the schools and colleges form the infrastructure for that. But I think it's interesting to look at these research clusters from more of an interdisciplinary nature. So if we take materials research, for example, that work goes on in engineering, it goes on in chemistry, and it goes on in physics. And so from a commercial partner standpoint, they don't really care which department or which college the work gets done in, but more that strength exists. You'll also notice in the graphic there that the School of Freshwater Science is in the building phase as public health, and I'm very proud to have you participate in some of the launches of those facilities here. So I mentioned materials. So UWM has broad strength in materials, and that spans the fundamental materials to applied materials. On the fundamental side, we're doing work in graphene and catalysis, and moving more towards the applied end, lightweight castings and other materials of that sort. You heard about energy research yesterday with Mary Ann Wright from Johnson Controls. We've got strength in energy research, not just, and that overlaps materials, but in addition, we have work going on in power control electronics. We have research in computational fluid dynamics that's helping look at new wind turbine designs and make them more efficient. So a broad strength across materials and other areas there as well. Imaging and sensors is another area that spans physics, where they're doing fundamental work in spectroscopy and imaging in engineering, for example, where they're doing work in image processing algorithms, things that GE Healthcare, for example, might do in an MRI machine or something like that. So a strength in imaging, and that overlaps into sensors and devices, and that also connects with a lot of the fundamental materials work that goes on in nanotechnology. Computer science information, we have strength in software and informatics, information science in the School of Information Science, and management information sciences in the Lubar School of Business. In addition, Lubar is building a new strength in supply chain management. Anthony Ross is a new endowed professor in supply chain management, and we're very fortunate Rockwell Automation endowed that professorship. And his work is not just going on with the traditional industry segments, he's actually getting involved with healthcare and looking at supply chain management in ways that you might not traditionally think of it. Gravity. UWM's physics department is an internationally recognized strength in gravity. You may not realize this, but they collaborate with entities around the world in the search for gravity waves. That in itself may not be terribly promising from a commercial standpoint, although it's important scientific work. Underlying that gravitational strength is a strong computational ability. This group of people deals with some of the largest data sets that there are. They're looking to find a needle in the haystack, essentially, from looking at data. So they have an enormous computing capability on campus, and they've really worked to figure out how to efficiently process large data sets in ways that could benefit other segments. That computational ability also overlaps with some of our mathematical science and atmospheric science programs. If you listen to WUWM locally, there's innovative weather is delivered here from UWM. And that's a model that was started by Dr. Paul Rober, where he engages students in predicting weather, and they also provide a service to companies for more targeted weather forecasts. So if you're We Energies and you want to know, should I keep a crew on tonight because there might be an ice storm, Innovative Weather gives them a very targeted forecast to give them specific information on a level of granularity that you can't get from the National Weather Service. Moving into the healthcare area, the School of Public Health Science has broad strengths in human movement science, disability and rehabilitation, accessibility. Bioinformatics work going on there overlaps the software and informatics work that happens in engineering and other areas. In nursing and the Helen Bader School of Social Welfare, we have strengths in evidence-based nursing and behavioral work, as well as aging and addiction. We have strengths in neuroscience and behavioral work, and a lot of that work overlaps with some of the imaging work that goes on in functional imaging in areas like that. Chemistry has strengths. Chemistry and bioscience have strengths in chemical synthesis, in particular targeting certain central nervous system disorders, and molecular biology. And at the center of that, we have strengths in environmental monitoring, environmental systems, and this is the core that is around which the School of Freshwater Science is being built. And you saw yesterday in the video aquaculture. Fred Binkowski talked about his work and getting to eat his research. Actually, our first licensed technology is around that, and so I like to say eat perch because it's good for the UW system. that is a broad picture of UWM's research strengths. Again, about a $70 million strength, and looking at some broad clusters. And if we look at this, that materials area, that's a $7 or $10 million cluster that spans a lot of areas. And this healthcare cluster here is about an $11 million cluster of research. Chemistry and bioscience, $5 to $6 million. So we're really looking at how do we align those clusters and connect with industry. And one of the things that we're doing is sort of around the periphery. We have a series of centers where we're trying to make it easier for industry to connect with us. And I'll talk a little bit more about energy and water, as well as some clinical work that we're connected with the medical college on. So how do we try and leverage that? One of the things that we've done is created a grant program, a Catalyst grant program, which is designed to seed promising projects that have both strong science as well as commercial potential. And so we've been very fortunate that local organizations, including Rockwell Automation Charitable Corporation, the Bradley Foundation, and the Hertzfeld Foundation have supported this program. With their help, we've been able to make $2.7 million in grants. And we are very focused on program outcomes. When we go back to our donors, when we share with the leadership here, we want to be able to show that we're getting results. And we measure those outcomes in various ways, including the generation of ideas, validating those ideas, and moving them towards commercialization. So if we look at the generation of ideas, close to 70 student scholarly publications, intellectual property and patents are one of the ways we measure ideas. So we've had over 80 invention disclosures associated with the program, 24 patent filings, and to date, half a dozen issued patents that have come out of programs directly related to the Catalyst program. Moving down the line towards validation, we've had more than a dozen companies who have taken these technologies, brought them in-house, and done some evaluation on it. One of the first key steps to figuring out whether they can launch a product around the idea. Development, we're seeing an uptick in SBIR grants. Small Business Innovative Research grants are a way that early-stage companies can leverage support, and so we're seeing more of that with some applications. And if we look at the follow-on funding, I mentioned that we had invested $2.7 million so far. To date, we can count over $7 million, $7.3 million in follow-on funding associated with these technologies. That takes many forms. It's investment back in the university through sponsored research. It may be investment in a startup company, or it may be a corporate-sponsored research effort where they're focused on helping validate our technology. So it's at least a 3 times multiplier on the money invested, and we continue to see those outcomes grow. And at the bottom, commercialization. From this program alone, 5 licensed technologies and another 7 that are optioned and under evaluation by companies. Let me give you a specific example, though, Catalyst Grant Program. This is Dr. Vali Raiku. Dr. Raiku is a physicist, and he studies proteins. Proteins are one of the key signaling pathways in our body, and there's a lot of work that goes around in studying proteins around how do you target them. Traditionally, one of the ways that proteins are studied is by tagging them. There's something called green fluorescent protein. It was actually the Nobel Prize was given out for the creation of green fluorescent protein more than a couple of decades ago. Since the time of the creation of GFP, as it's called, they've developed a whole bunch of other colors. There are yellow fluorescent and red fluorescent proteins. One of the problems with the study techniques, though, is that you could really only look at one color at a time. And what Dr. Raiku developed was a way to image in real time multiply tagged proteins, so you could look at the way proteins were interacting. It's almost like going from black and white TV to color TV in a truly powerful analysis tool. He and I started working together about 5 years ago. He said he had an idea, and we went after a patent application on it. Since that time, he took a class with the BizStarts organization in town and created a business plan. He and I met over the course of the summer and really hammered out that business plan. We brought Dr. Raiku in to pitch at one of our investor forums, and eventually Dr. Raiku got connected with Dr. Tom Moser, a serial entrepreneur who had built and exited companies, and they created their first product, and I'm actually proud to say that they've got their first purchase order in May. This is an imaging system that attaches to the microscope. And so the company, Aurora Spectral Technologies, has now gone through 3 rounds of angel funding. They have sponsored work at the university, and they're bringing a product to market. And so we're proud to have played a small part in that. I have to acknowledge that there's a lot of hard work in front of this startup company, but it's really neat to see that they've got a product that's in the market now based on UWM technology. As Chancellor Lovell mentioned, when we first met, our efforts were modest and we were just getting going. We've been around for 6 years. At the time, this shows our portfolio in 2006. It had 1 patent application. This is our portfolio today. On the front end, we measure the intake on the disclosure end. If we look at our patent portfolio, it's over 50 matters in the intellectual property portfolio, including nearly 24 issued or allowed patents. We also have copyrighted works that we're managing and finding innovative ways to bring technology to market through copyrighted works. If we invest in intellectual property, though, we have to wrap a marketing program around them. We have to try and connect with companies. And so we have a marketing effort where we measure that through metrics, sales contacts, numbers of agreements with companies. And we're proud to say that our marketing metrics continue to show positive upward trajectory and results that are starting to come from that. As you move to the right, you see technologies moving into the marketplace. So our licensed technologies, we have more than a dozen licensed technologies that are in the market. And this year to date, we've completed 11 option or license agreements around UWM technology. And in the lower right, we have UWM startup companies, 5 companies that are currently working with UWM Research Foundation licensed technologies, and more prospects there that we're working very closely with. One of them, these are prospects where we're meeting with the faculty, helping them define a business plan, bringing in leaders that can complement their scientific expertise with business understanding and help them build their companies. And we're working with university leadership to help them understand how do we create a faculty startup, how do we manage the conflicts properly and do that in a meaningful way. The other thing you'll notice here are a lot of pictures. I have this on a wall chart in my wall, and it's important when I have a faculty member's picture staring at me because it really spurs us to action. All the work here that we do stands on the shoulders of the great researchers of UWM. And it's not just the researchers, but it's, as President Riley was alluding to, it's the teams that go around them. It's the undergraduates and the graduates and the postdocs that stand behind every one of these technologies that really make what we're doing possible. So I'm really proud to say that we've been able together to build a real portfolio, and it continues to grow. Another example, and sometimes the technologies come from unlikely areas. This is Dr. Rhonda Montgomery from the Helen Bader School of Social Welfare. Dr. Montgomery studies the aging process, and she, in particular, caregivers. If you have an elderly relative or an aging parent, it's oftentimes the eldest daughter, but not always, who is responsible for the care of that individual. And one of the things that happens is oftentimes when that aging relative is moved to the next higher level of care, say a nursing home, it happens when the caregiver's burden gets too high. They effectively have to give up and move that person to the next level of care. So Dr. Montgomery developed a system and piloted around assessing the needs of the caregiver, figuring out what their burdens were, and matching them with the right services in the community. If you can do that, and you can delay the entry into the next higher level of care, say a nursing home, by 8 months or a year, there's an enormous saving to the healthcare system. In addition, she's been able to show that giving the right support to the caregivers and matching them with services that are already out there can reduce their levels of depression and a lot of other metrics which result in health costs for the caregivers themselves. So this is an enormously valuable tool, and we're looking at how do we get that into market. Dr. Montgomery received the Rosalind Carter Leadership in Caregiving Award for partnership that she did with Washington State. And since that time, we have completed over 7 license agreements for the technology. It's in use in all the states you see here, so it's really gone national. In addition, we've licensed it to a company that is taking it to an internet platform, a company called Care Conscience. And Dr. Montgomery is looking at launching a startup company to take it into another area, targeting the insurance industries. So as I said, this is not a patented technology. This is a copyrighted technology out of the Helen Bader School of Social Welfare. And it's really an honor to work with people like Dr. Montgomery and to see this technology get out to where it can really impact people. Coming back to that picture of UWM's funded research, this is a picture of UWM, but one of the unique strengths that UWM has is that we're in the Milwaukee area, and we're in the center of a lot of great companies and other academic institutions. So we take a step back and look, how does our work fit with what's going on in the Milwaukee area? Across town, we have the Medical College of Wisconsin. They have great strengths in cardiovascular research, proteomics, imaging, cancer, other genomics, and microbiology. There are $150 or $250 million in research strengths that are all clustered together around the Medical College, Children's, Brainerd, the VA. We have the Blood Center of Wisconsin, which is doing about $20 million in research. We have Marquette University with another $20 million. MSOE, strong engineering strengths. And of course, we have Madison and opportunities to partner with them as well. So I come back to this idea of some centers, and we have, I'll give you a couple examples of key centers where we're trying to make it easier for industry to connect in with those research strengths that we have at UWM. The first is the Water Center. Under the umbrella of the Water Council, and we've talked a lot about water, but the Water Council is a broad effort. One of the things that we've done is we've created a joint National Science Foundation Center with Marquette University. It's an NSF model called the IUCRC, or Industry University Cooperative Research Center, where the companies come in, they pick the research projects, and they fund them. This industry pull model is extremely powerful. We've got 6 partner companies that include A.O. Smith and Badger Meter who are coming in and picking the projects. We've been doing this now for 3 years. I have to say it's been a real process. We've developed a roadmap around it, but when we started, the ideas that we were proposing didn't meet the company's needs. And we've really gone a long way over the last 3 years to develop projects that were more responsive to what companies need, and to do that in a way where we're looking towards an eventual entry point to the companies. And so it continues to be a success using an NSF model that's been around for a long time. But we're very proud that in the water area we've been able to put it in place here in a way that really makes sense. Energy is the next area. A lot of energy companies, Eaton, Johnson Controls, Rockwell Automation, and they've come together, and we're working with Madison, MSOE, Marquette, and UWM have come together into what has now become the Wisconsin Energy Research Consortium. It's got more than a dozen member companies now. Same kind of industry pull model. They're funding their 4th round of grants. And as with the Water Center, we're seeing interest from industry in similar areas. A lot of interest in materials technologies and sensing platforms that can be taken in different areas. And so both those are good examples of how we're aligning those research strengths with some of the industry clusters. And then I mentioned the Medical College. The Medical College has a National Institute of Health center called a CTSI, Center for Translational Institute, which is all about getting things all the way from concept all the way to the bedside. And that CTSI center is really a backbone connector around healthcare, and it's really helping connect all those researchers, all that work together with the healthcare cluster that I mentioned, as well as some materials technologies and sensing technologies that go on at UWM. Of course, we have other companies in that area clustered around. We have healthcare companies that include GE Healthcare. We have and we have pharmaceutical companies. And if we look down towards northern Illinois and southeast Wisconsin, strong pharmaceutical companies. So we have about $250 million in academic research going on here. And if we could count the industry research, it would be significantly more. And so that's really one of the things that we have that's unique about UWM, our proximity to all that work, and an opportunity to connect that in terms of economic development. Another example from the water area. Under the umbrella of the Water Council, we managed to connect Dr. Pete Geisinger with Tom Dougherty from Advanced Chemical Systems. Dr. Geisinger and his colleagues developed a technique to sense contaminants in wastewater. And he was doing something, and when Advanced Chemical Systems became aware of his work, they said, well, that's interesting, but if you could get it to do this, if you could get it to sense, we're in the business of selling chemicals to companies to treat their industrial wastewater. If you could get it to sense heavy metals in industrial wastewater, that would really be compelling to us. And so we gave Dr. Geisinger a catalyst grant where he could prove out the initial technology. They came together on the strength of the data from that catalyst grant. They got an SBIR grant from the National Science Foundation, and they're up and running. They've got a long ways to go, but it's really a neat example of where Dr. Geisinger, in the middle, Paul Henning, one of his students, was there as a PhD student, is now a postdoc, is working with Dr. Geisinger in his lab, but is now transitioning over to working with the company. So it's a neat progression of the technology as well as the people involved. Mary Ann Wright yesterday from Johnson Controls talked about that corporate partnership, but we're extremely pleased on many levels, and I'll give you a little bit more detailed example there. Johnson Controls basically set out a challenge to both faculty members at Milwaukee and Madison. They identified 8 areas that were kind of on their technology roadmap and their product development challenges. They put that out in a very detailed request for proposals, and teams from Milwaukee and Madison bid on those proposals. They've funded 6 projects so far, and they intend to do that over multiple years. And so it's helping our researchers target things that are important to Johnson Controls, but it also does it in a way that makes our researchers more competitive for federal grants. So under the broad umbrella of energy research, Johnson Controls and that partnership continues to be a great example of how we'd like to do more and more of those things. If I come back to the broad picture, I'll fill in one last piece and then it'll bring me back to where we left off with Dave. At the center of all that is our what we call our innovation accelerator. We're trying to use that facility to build a bridge between all the work that goes on here at UW-Milwaukee and all that clinical translational work that goes on there. So if we zoom in on what that work looks like, it's a very compelling building, but I really get excited about the work that's going to go on there. And it's in the areas of nano, bio, and info, not surprisingly. On the information side, we have examples like Dr. Hong Yu, who works in medical informatics. She's developing search tools that help both patients and doctors as well as researchers look at the increasing volume of data that comes out there and find it in more efficient ways. Dr. Junhong Chen is working in nanotechnology and trying to apply those sorts of technologies to biosensing and other applications. We have a group of people working in imaging, and on the biomedical side, people working in biomedical research as well as ergonomics. So it's compelling to see the pictures of what it's going to look like, but what really gets me exciting is the work that's going to go on in this building. So that brings us back to the complementary roles of the foundation, and we'd like to conclude with a video that shows the groundbreaking of the Innovation Accelerator.
I truly believe that this project will transform the region in terms of both academics, bringing UWM right across the street from the research hub of this region, the Regional Medical Center. Truly, we will add value to what they're doing. They will add value to us, and nothing but great things will happen.
Having all that synergy right here, the collaboration with labs and technologies and advancement, this is ultimately the kind of collaboration we're looking for. This is one of the key economic engines for not only this region, but for really this state.
The UWM Innovation Park will be an accelerator for the significant work that already occurs out here. And now with the faculty and scientists from UWM out on our campus here, we're going to have an explosion of creativity and productivity.
I believe that this area of what we're doing here today could easily become another Palo Alto if we all worked like hell on it.
We want nothing more than to work with the state, with the municipalities, with the organizations where we can build jobs. And we talk about bringing in jobs, but not just jobs, high-wage jobs, high value that build on the strengths we have. We're checking all the boxes right here.
I just want to say all of us will look back at today 10 or 15 years from now and think what a great day this was for not only UWM, but for the city and for the region.
Well, again, thank you to the committee for the invitation to come and speak to you today. It's been a great pleasure. And
any questions or comments?
Answer questions.
David, Ryan? Mark.
This is something that's pretty small right now, but as I understand it, it has a lot of potential. And my question is to where does UWM fit in? A few years ago, the legislature appropriated a small amount of money for the Wisconsin Genomics Initiative. And the idea was to take the searchable DNA that Marshfield Clinic has, the geneticists of the medical college, the biostatisticians at Madison, and I don't know if it was through nursing or through informatics, but there was also some planned relationship for UWM in that effort. Can you comment on that?
I apologize, I don't know the details of our relationship there. I know that Dean David Garman of the School of Freshwater Science mentioned genomics as one of the cluster areas that they are, and strengths that they're building on there. So I would imagine that it's involved with that as well as the CTSI initiative, which links together the clinical areas. But I have to apologize, beyond that I don't know the details.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, well, we'll adjourn our Ready Committee meeting, and we'll go back to our committee reports. You've got a report of actions taken by the Capital Planning and Budget Committee, and I'll ask its chairman to comment further.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Capital Planning and Budget Committee met jointly, first of all, with Business, Finance, and Audit yesterday to hear a presentation on building a better Wisconsin, construction underway and beyond. Vice Chancellor Christy Brown spoke about the status of the Milwaukee initiative and described already the portions already completed and the building projects that are now underway. She said that this initiative will provide more than 4,000 construction jobs in the Milwaukee area and enable growth in research, which will lead to new private sector jobs. The two committees then separated, and the Capital Planning and Budget Committee addressed 10 resolutions relating to construction and lease of capital projects, 4 of which, by the way, came from UW-Milwaukee right here on this campus. And all of 10 of those projects were approved, and including the all-agency maintenance and repair projects on 3 campuses. And I would present those resolutions as a consent item, and I'll move their adoption.
Second. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
And that concludes my report.
All right. You also have a report of action taken by the Education Committee, and I'll ask its chairman to comment or any further.
Thank you very much. As noted, you do have the committee minutes already in your emails. It gives a very accurate representation of the meeting. Excuse me. I just want to highlight a couple of things quickly. One of the things that the committee, we had a presentation by UWM on the Building a Healthier Wisconsin, which illustrates for us the power and productivity that comes from interdisciplinary collaboration and campus community partnerships. We also I want to direct your attention to the important discussion that we had on the revision of the program planning, review, and approval process, and we will be receiving action on that at our August meeting. So with that, Mr. President, I will now move the consent agenda, which the Education Committee unanimously approved the minutes of the April 12, 2012 meeting, along with the following 5 resolutions, which I now move for adoption. Resolution 1.1.A2, accepting the 2012-13 proffer from the William F. Vilas Trust Estate for support of scholarships, fellowships, professorships, and special programs in the arts, humanities, social sciences, and music at UW-Madison and UW-Milwaukee. Resolution 1.1.A3, authorizing the implementation of the BS in Environmental Studies at UW-Parkside. Resolution 1.1.A4, authorizing the implementation of the BBA in International Business at UW-Whitewater. And Resolution 1.1.A5, authorizing the implementation of the online Masters of Science in Nursing at UW-Green Bay. And finally, Resolution 1.1.D3, accepting the 2012 report on faculty promotions, tenure, designations, and other changes of status. That's my motion.
Is there a motion? Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. And then we'll switch to the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. You've got that report that's been sent out as well. I'll ask its chairman for any additional comments.
Mark chaired the meeting.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Vice President Bradley.
We participated in the joint meeting with the Capital Planning and Budget Committee, and I'll let the chair of that committee talk about the contents of that portion of our joint meeting. But then we reconvened as the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. We heard from Elizabeth Dion, the Director of the Office on Operations Review and Audit Review. She presented a summary of the recently completed program and a review of our policies on reporting of crimes against children, which was a specific request that had been made by the committee before. We passed Resolution 12A1 that endorsed 8 separate program review recommendations, and we were supportive of the recommendations and also suggested that national criminal background checks be standardized and that vendors and volunteers should be subject to criminal background checks in instances of similar risk. We also indicated that the cost of implementation of this effort need to be calculated, and this was a report with recommendations. This was not specific implementation that will follow. Elizabeth Dion continued with the quarterly status update of ongoing projects the office is working on, along with information regarding current or pending activities of the Legislative Audit Bureau which may impact UW's system. Then Senior Vice President Michael Morgan indicated the semi-annual report of large and vital information technology projects as required by Wisconsin statutes included Phase 2 of the HRS implementation and the Pioneer Administration Software System re-implementation. Then Debbie Durkin, Vice President for Finance, presented a summary of gifts, grants, and contract awards for the period July 1, 2011 through March 31, 2012. The total awards for this period were approximately $1.2 billion, which was an increase of $14 million compared to the prior year. Federal awards were down, but the university system continues to become more competitive in attracting non-federal research grants. We then approved the minutes of our April 12 meeting, the UW-Oshkosh agreement with MacRae Corporation, UW-Madison's agreement with PharmaNet LLC, and UW-Madison's agreement with Learfield Communications. Michael Morgan then gave us his Senior Vice President report. He and IT Project Director Lori Dockin offered the final report on the Human Resources Project, as well as an update on the current status of the HRS implementation. Associate Vice President of Human Resources and Workforce Diversity, Al Crisp, gave a status update on the progress of the new university personnel systems being developed, and Senior Vice President Morgan concluded by having a discussion with the committee regarding some potential deep dive topics where the committee may want to focus its time in the future. So on behalf of the committee, I now move adoption of resolutions 12A1, dealing with approving the recommendations of the program review of policies related to the reporting of crimes against children, resolution 12C3 regarding the approval of UW-Oshkosh's contractual agreement with MacRae Corporation, resolution 12C4 regarding the approval of UW-Madison's contractual agreement with PharmaNet, and resolution 12C5 regarding the approval of UW-Madison's agreement with Learfield Communications.
Is there a second to that? Second. All right. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to Mike Fellow to have an update on the Legislative Task Force on UW Restructuring and Operational Flexibilities, which met again this week on Wednesday. Mike.
Thanks. We wanted to acknowledge Kristen Brown's presentation, by the way, of UW-Milwaukee and the joint meeting. Obviously, UW-Milwaukee, as we know from the past few evenings, has a lot of projects going on, and it's very exciting. I'm going to talk about the May 9th meeting and the June 6th meeting of the Special Task Force on UW Restructuring and Operational Flexibilities. In May 9th meeting, the task force heard presentations from a variety of concerns from students, faculty, academic staff, operational classified staff. The task force also discussed recommendations regarding governance, articulation and credit transfer, and UW-required reports. Recommendations supported by the majority of task force members include, under governance, chancellors should be encouraged to create institutional-level advisory boards with one or two regent members, one of whom should be from outside the institution's region. Also, they supported for continued chancellor participation on the President's Cabinet and other leadership discussions. Under transfers, they supported modernization of the TIS. Michael Morgan referred to it in his report. They're very intrigued by this system and think it should be updated and used as much as possible, utilized as much as possible, with integration of WTCS and private institutions. Also, there was support for initiatives to enhance and strengthen our transfer advising. We also talked about all the reports that the UW system does for many people and agencies. We took it off the agenda and basically said you should make visits to everybody receiving reports and make sure they still need them. So that we kind of felt we were digging a little deeper than we needed to be digging, so we just deferred that. The June 6th meeting, the task force discussed recommendations regarding personnel system and compensation plans, tuition authority, and capital planning and procurement flexibilities. Recommendations supported by the majority of the task force under personnel systems. Through the personnel systems being developed, the Board of Regents and UW-Madison Chancellor should decide how personnel transfers will occur in the future. These personnel systems should also address the role of staff who were formerly in classified service in shared governance. Compensation plans, rather than the current multiple-step process, Board of Regents, OSER, Joker, Legislature, Governor, the Board of Regents should request funding for employee compensation through the biennial budget process. This will allow UW to consider compensation as part of its total funding request as part of a comprehensive approach to budgeting. You can see some of this aligns with Michael Morgan's presentation and will also align with David Miller's presentation. The task force also considered a Me Too proposal, which would ensure that UW employees receive no less than the base pay plan approved by Joker and the state legislature for state employees. This proposal was not supported by a majority of the task force members, but will be included in the minority report in that section. The Board of Regents should have the authority to provide merit-based salary increases using base resources. This is currently prohibited by state statute. Tuition authority, the task force recognized that the legislature and governor will continue to play a role in determining tuition. Therefore, the task force is recommending that the Board of Regents develop a comprehensive proposal on tuition and pricing for submission to and consideration by the legislature. Under capital planning and flexibilities, the task force supported the 4 recommendations made by the UW system. They are: place primary responsibility for planning and design for UW projects with the Board of Regents. DOA should strengthen its staffing capacity and project delivery and construction supervision. Redefine enumeration to create 2 categories: new space and existing facilities. The threshold for enumeration for new projects should increase from $760,000 to $1 million. Incentivize investment in existing facilities by providing a block of funding based for all work within existing buildings. And the 4th, authorize UW to enter into lease agreements. Now, the last 2 were supported by DOA. The first 2 were not. So there will be a minority report on that. The task force is also recommending that a third-party entity review the entire capital planning process, including DOA and UW's respective roles and duties, to find additional efficiencies for consideration. Procurement. The task force supported the recommendations made by the UW system in the area to grant authority to the Board of Regents under Chapter 36 to make all purchasing decisions for the UW system institutions. This should include rulemaking authority. UW institutions must purchase from mandatory state contracts unless the purchase is available at a lesser cost. All UW contracts should be extended to DOA, state agencies, and other governmental and educational entities whenever authorized to do so. The task force is also recommending that in conjunction with these changes, the UW procurement process shift to a post-award audit process, which would be less bureaucratic and should reduce duplication of effort by UW and DOA procurement staff. The task force is going to circulate the recommendations to all of its members for review and comment, and with that feedback, the final report is, I assume as we speak, is starting to be drafted. We covered a lot, and I think with very positive outcomes. Obviously, what we end up with is a report that goes to the legislature. But in that, there was a lot of legislative involvement in everything I've talked about. We're a bit optimistic that these items will move forward. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for all your work on that. Is there any questions or comments for Mike? Okay, well, thank you again for your work, hard work, and your presentation today. We are now going to the approval of the 2013 Board of Regents meeting schedule that's in your packet, which Regent Roberts most importantly involves that meeting in La Crosse in April of 2013 that you and I and Chancellor Gao out here will be planning. Is there a motion to approve that? Is there a second? You're in charge of entertainment, Roberts. All in favor of that motion? Aye. Okay. Opposed? All right. Now we're going to get to election of officers. Since I anticipate being involved in this somehow, I have asked Regent Pruitt, who is the most immediate past president still serving on the board, to preside during the election process. You can go from there?
Not recognizing the very temporary nature of this position, I do not want to go up there, but I did want to be in a position that I could make eye contact with everyone, and I thought this might be the an appropriate place. That's all right, Mr. Vice President. The bylaws of the board specify that officers of the board are elected at the annual meeting, which is held in June, and hold their offices for 1 year until their successors are elected. If there is only one nominee for an office, the election is by voice vote. If there is more than one nominee, the election is by ballot. Terms of the office begin immediately after the June meeting. Let me just stop there because I know we have a number of new regents. I wanted to be sure everyone is comfortable with that. If they have any questions about the process we're going to go through here, now would be a good time to ask. If not, we'll proceed. Are we?
Who will be issuing the ballots?
Secretary Redu will be issuing the ballots. She will then hold the ballot. She will be the only person holding the ballots, and she will make a count of those ballots and present to me the results, and I will announce them. Okay? Any other questions? If not, we'll move first. We have the election of the President of the Board. Is there a nomination for the office of President of the Board? Regent Tyler.
I plan to make one nomination, but I'd like to make some comments because I understand there's going to be multiple nominations. But I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to serve under the leadership of both Regent Smith and Regent Falbo outside of this board, and have the highest regard for both. Recently spoke with each of them when they indicated their desire to lead this board. And I'm delighted that we have the two standing, not so delighted that we have to choose one. But as I explained to each of them, I normally would have a bias for process or the moving through chairs. Although I think we today have a challenging political and economic environment. We've had a very challenging past couple of years, and I hope I'm wrong, but I would expect we'll have a challenging next couple of years. And I believe strongly that relationships with lawmakers and the administration is going to be paramount. The relationship between this board and this institution and those lawmakers and administration. And so for that reason, I would like to place Mike Falbo's name in nomination for president.
Regent Falbo has been nominated for president of the board. Is there a second to this nomination?
I second that motion.
Regent Pointer has seconded the nomination. Are there further nominations for president of the board? Regent Bradley.
Yes. Thank you. I asked to be recognized to nominate Vice President Brent Smith as president, and I do that for two reasons. First, because I think Brent has demonstrated his outstanding leadership, his service as the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee chair for a number of years, his leadership on some special committees, and also his performance over the last year as vice president. Brent's leadership ability has also been recognized by his colleagues on the Technical College Board when he served on that board and they elected him as their president. And as a result, in my opinion, I think there are few people in the state that have the breadth and depth of understanding of public higher education than Brent Smith does. I don't think there's any question about Brent's experience, his ability, his dedication to our mission, and I also don't think there's any question based on past performance of Brent's ability to deal with our very diverse constituency, whether that's at the system level or among our institutions, at the state capitol, or in the communities throughout the state. My second reason for nominating Brent has to do with us. And I believe our position as a special agency of state government. I think the legislature did something very special when it created the UW system as part of Chapter 36. The legislature provided that we as a board not the governor and not the legislature, would determine who are best to lead our institutions. And the legislature determined that we, not the legislature and not the governor, would determine who is best to lead the system office as president. And the legislature decided that we as a board, rather than the governor or the legislature, would determine who is best to lead our board. And in doing so, I think that the legislature followed best practices of the private sector. Private sector policy boards, complex organizations, elect vice presidents, one reason to step in an emergency, obviously, but barring an emergency, boards elect vice presidents primarily to groom them to be the future president. And that's what we have done. And the history of this board is to select the vice president, have that person develop more institutional memory, have that person be ready for a smooth transition. That's what we have done. We did a year ago in electing Brent Smith as our vice president. I don't see any reason to depart from our historical practice now. He's ready. He's demonstrated that. He's willing. And I urge you, for those two reasons, to vote for him as our next president.
Thank you. Regent Smith has been nominated. Is there a second to that nomination? Regent Walsh.
Yes, I am seconding the nomination. I won't repeat what Mark said, but I do think what is important in this time, and when I say this time, I'm really talking about the economic times, the issues, the multiple constituencies, not the politics, but the multiple constituencies. And Brent's experience, first with the technical college, where he served on the board for a long time, and it was the representative of that board on this board before he became an appointed member of this board, is a wonderful, wonderful background and experience. And of course, he's had significant experience while on this board, including serving as vice chair and chair of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. And we do have a historic transition. And it is, having served as vice president and president, that vice presidential year is really important. It's become more important. For instance, Brent has spent, each month with the leadership on a conference call, multiple meetings, also including select chancellors. This is a new and much more engaged process. But I want to remind us, and maybe I'm just a little bit more independent, but the statute that tells us what our responsibility is and I think I can quote it, the primary responsibility for governance of the system is vested in the Board of Regents. And that message is that it's the Board of Regents that makes the decisions. And in response to that, I can think of numerous times where we have been, I won't say at odds, but had difference of opinions with certain decision makers. And I'm talking about members of the legislature, the governor's office, the public. And it's because we prize that independence. And for example, when the Mayor Barrett and Governor Doyle urged us not to approve the School of Public Health in Madison, it would have been, this was about 4 or 5 years ago. We had a lot of pressure on us, but we had gone through a process and arrived at a decision, and we made that decision, and we built that school, and it is now one of the 2 integrated schools of public health and medical schools in this country. That was a detailed kind of decision that we resisted the decision makers' thoughts, but we clearly had studied it a lot more. And then, of course, there's issues of academic freedom. I think we can all remember Mr. Churchill down at Whitewater, and again the professor in Madison on 9/11, and we defended that. And from both sides of the aisle came complaints about that. But my point about the independence is that the governance, the statutory governance of this system is not politics. And while I certainly appreciate the relationships, I promise you I had a good relationship with Governor Thompson and Governor Doyle, but I can promise you I also didn't feel I had to agree with them. And while I think that's good, I think what's more important is that we have a history, we have a transition, a necessary transition. Brent has gone through that. The good news is Mike is a competent person, and I'm fully supportive of him being the vice president and going through the same process. I've always enjoyed working with him. But I think this is an opportunity to continue that process. Looking back, I cannot remember a time that we didn't elect the vice president. There's a time when we didn't elect the president, but we didn't elect the vice president. And so I urge your support for Brent Smith.
So Brent Smith has been nominated, and that has been seconded. We have, I know, last year invited further discussion from other members of the board if they so desire prior to, as I said, following our bylaws. When there is more than one nomination, the election is by ballot. So I would ask if there is any further discussion or comments that any member of the board would like to make. Seeing none, as I say, there is now more than one nomination. The election will be by ballot. Jane Redu will distribute those ballots. After you've filled them out, she will then collect them and count them and hand over to me the count, and we will go from there. Perhaps could be a little music playing. Can we as an interlude or something? Thank you.
We didn't think about automating this process.
No, we didn't. There's some traditions, however, that are... Good to point that out, Kate, Regent Pointer. Thank you so much.
The only 18-member board with 18.
That's true.
I'll agree not to. If Mike agrees not to. I'll vote for you.
I think it's reflective of this board that we're carrying this out with smiles on our faces, and I think that's important, just so you know.
Yeah, what are you doing? You guys got 3 ballots.
A little less obvious.
We need your piano, Regent Gartel. Yeah.
Secretary is removing the hanging chads from the ballot at the moment, so we'll see.
The results of the ballots are as follows. Regent Falbo has received 9 votes. Regent Smith has received 9 votes. 10 are needed to elect a new president. So we have a tie. I would suggest that we can do one of two things, and I would open it up. The procedure prescribes that if there is a tie, we will go back and do this again, seek new nominations, and then proceed to another vote. We can do that immediately, or we could, if it is the desire of the board to take a brief 5 to 10 minute break and return, we can do that. And I might suggest that as a possibility, but I would not, I'm open to a procedure and a consensus from this group as to what you would like to do. Are there any thoughts? I'm sorry, Regent Foss? No, you. I mean, believe me, just very temporarily.
I was looking at the president of the system. If we keep voting and it keeps being 9 to 9.
What happens if we keep voting and it remains 9 to 9? Maybe I would defer to our legal counsel, Mr. Stafford.
Regents, your process here is governed by Robert's Rules of Order, not Regent Roberts. But basically, the rules say that the body is to continue to vote until you successfully elect an officer by majority. So that's what the rule says.
It's very similar to electing the Pope.
That's true. Why don't I suggest if I could, and why don't we take a 5-minute, how about just a 5-minute recess, just everybody's, it's almost like being in an airplane where your legs stop moving. So why don't we agree that we will resume at 12:15? Well, let me make sure. Okay, 12:10, I'm sorry, and we'll come back.
flying by. We're playing it by ear, Regent Bradley.
All right, I think we will, if we can, resume and return to the issue of election of the President of the Board. Is there a nomination for the President of the Board? Regent Tyler.
Michael Falbo.
Regent Falbo has been nominated. Is there a second?
I would like to second that motion.
Regent Pointer has seconded that nomination. Are there any further nominations? Regent Bradley.
I nominate Vice President Brent Smith.
Is there a second to that nomination? Seconded by Regent Walsh. Is there any discussion? Further discussion? If not, and since there is, as Regent bylaws of this board specify, that if there's more than one nomination, the election will be by ballot. Secretary Radu will once again distribute the ballots, then collect and count them.
Soothing music. Thanks, Jeff.
The results of the second vote, Regent Falbo has received 9 votes. Regent Smith has received 9 votes. So I would suggest that we continue and then potentially, based on that, we could then have another break if so desired. But I would suggest that we move forward here. So let me ask you: is there a nomination for the office of President of the Board? Regent Tyler. Regent Falbo has been nominated. Is there a second to that nomination?
I second that nomination.
Regent Pointer has seconded the nomination. Are there any further nominations for the office of President? Regent Pratt.
I nominate Vice President Smith.
Is there a second to that nomination? Regent Walsh has seconded the nomination. Since there is more than one nomination, the election will be by ballot. Jane will distribute the ballots and then collect and count. The results of the third vote for president, Regent Falbo has received 9 votes. Regent Smith has received 9 votes. So we remain tied. I would potentially suggest if the board is to take a 5-minute break, get up, stand. But let's try to really make it at 5 minutes if we can. What's our official clock? Yes, Regent Whitburn.
Just a unanimous ballot of a slate of Regent Smith in the position of president and Regent Falbo in the position of vice president.
I second that nomination.
Okay, now Chuck's completely off his. It's only fair for me to share my insecurities here. I am not clear exactly. I'm going to have to defer once again. I'm going to have to go to just. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Regent Whitburn. Would you like to pose a question?
Such a ballot, is there?
Is the question whether you can nominate a slate of candidates
Yes.
for the 2 different positions?
Yes.
The bylaws do not speak to that. Roberts doesn't really address a slate process either, one way or the other.
So in the absence of a prohibition,
Well, there is the piece in Roberts that discusses and suggests that it's proper for the board to select the president first, then the vice president, then the other officers in the order as listed in the bylaws.
Okay.
So that we don't have a real clear guidance here, I don't think.
but it's not prohibited by our bylaws if we should have a unanimous ballot.
It's not prohibited.
So, if I understand this, if it would be in order, Regent Whitburn has moved for unanimous, assuming unanimous consent, for Regent Smith as president, Regent Falbo as vice president. If the board were to vote unanimously on Regent Whitburn's motion, that would comply with Robert's Rules of Order or whatever the other bylaw requirements are of this board.
The bylaw, though, is clear that you need to do this by a ballot. So I don't think you can do this in a... I'm sorry, if it's unanimous, yes, that's correct.
If it's unanimous, we can. So we're on firm ground here. Regent Whitburn or Regent Tyler? Regent Whitburn.
And I second it.
And you seconded it. Okay. Regent Tyler.
I just have a question of Regents Smith and Falbo if they would accept this nomination.
We'll know when they vote.
No, it's unanimous.
It's got to be unanimous. The answer is yes, doesn't it?
Let's. Okay. I think that's fair. I mean, so all those in favor of the motion made by Regent Whitburn and seconded. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, raise your hand. Let's just raise our hands, or we could. Why don't we do a roll call vote? I think if that's appropriate. We haven't raised our hands since I came here. So. I'm sorry. Regent Tyler?
Let's take 5 minutes.
Well, no.
The normal procedure in a call for a unanimous ballot is that you have immediate voice vote. And
Okay.
if we need to memorialize it with a show of hands for
Okay.
a technical reason, that puts it behind us.
Let me suggest that we would then vote by voice vote, and all those in favor of Regent Whitburn's motion as identified, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Is agreed to. So we have now elected, as I understand it, Regent President-elect Smith and Regent Vice President-elect Falbo. Congratulations to both of you. Let's give them all a vote.
Thank you very much.
I was going to say I have one more order of business, but let me ask if either the Regent President-elect or the Regent Vice President-elect would like to make any comments. What?
Go ahead.
Okay. The remaining officers can now be considered at this time. Incumbents of the officers of Secretary of the Board, Assistant Secretary, Trust Officer, and Assistant Trust Officers are as follows. Jane Reduce, Secretary of the Board. Jessica Lathrop, Assistant Secretary, focusing on policy analysis. Ann Notestad, Assistant Secretary, focusing on operations. Deborah Durkin, Trust Officer. Tom Safford, Assistant Trust Officer. And Doug Herr, Assistant Trust Officer. Is there a nomination to elect these officers?
I move. We couldn't do any better.
Are there any further nominations? Let us hope not. If not, all in favor of re-electing the incumbents, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. I now turn the gavel back to Vice President Smith.
Thank you, Chuck, for doing that today. I'll now call upon Regent Vasquez to present the resolution of appreciation to the UW-Milwaukee. Christine's going to receive it on Wednesday.
Okay. In light of the time, and I will dispense from my 10-page good wishes, and I will move forward immediately to the whereas. Whereas the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System very much appreciated learning about all the ways UW-Milwaukee is building a better Wisconsin, and whereas the Regents are grateful for the informative overview provided by Chancellor Michael Lovell, Dean David Garman, Dean Magda Peck, and also the university's partners as represented by Johnson Controls Power Solution Vice President Mary Ann Wright, and Milwaukee Water Council Executive Director Dean Amhouse. And whereas the Regents enjoyed learning the status of the UW-Milwaukee Master Plan initiatives and the construction underway and beyond, and especially seeing the dedication of the building for use by the Joseph J. Silver School of Public Health, witnessing the groundbreaking for the School of Freshwater Sciences, and tasting the school's delicious yellow perch, the place where you can eat your research, whereas the Regents acknowledge the progress in economic development that is possible through the efforts of the UWM Foundation and the UWM Research Foundation and their research partnerships as the UWM Innovation Campus, and whereas the Regents share UW-Milwaukee's belief in the values of building a healthier Wisconsin, and applaud UW-Milwaukee's leadership towards this goal, and whereas the Regents always value and are thankful for the hospitality extended by UW faculty, staff, and students throughout their annual visit, be it therefore resolved that the UW Board of Regents hereby extends its appreciation to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee for supporting the mission of the UW system and graciously hosting this productive June 2012 meeting. And that is the resolution.
I would note that Vice Chancellor Brown, by coincidence, happens to be wearing the Milwaukee colors today.
Just by coincidence. Communications, petitions, and memorials. Are any of those today? All right, we're going to take a 10-minute recess, and then we're going to reconvene in the fireplace